Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen is demanding a $20,000 engagement ring. Called off my engagement with my fiancé after her reaction to the engagement ring. The diamond ring I bought for her was lab-grown and it cost $2,400. A few days after the proposal, everything seemed fine until she somehow discovered the price of the ring. She told me she felt hurt that I would spend so little on her, claiming that it reflected her worth and the seriousness of our future marriage. When I asked what she had expected, she said the ring should have been at least $20,000. Granted, I sat her down and explained that while I could certainly afford a more expensive ring, we needed to manage expectations. There's also a wedding to plan, and we might be covering most of the costs ourselves since neither of our parents have the means to help. I pointed out that there are smarter ways to use $20,000, paying off a car loan, putting it towards a down payment on a house, investing it, or even funding her business idea, something we had talked about before. As someone who didn't grow up with financial stability, becoming financially secure and literate is a major priority for me. But despite the conversation, she insisted she would still feel bothered if I didn't upgrade the ring. Gentlemen, the price of a diamond ring should never dictate the quality of your marriage. I don't need to be married to know that. I've been a supportive and committed partner, otherwise she wouldn't have accepted my proposal. Her response shocked me, and after a lot of reflection, I ultimately decided to end our relationship. These past few days have been rough, full of emotions and reactions from loved ones and friends, but I chose to trust my gut on this one. We clearly have different values, and I realize this isn't the kind of marriage that I want. It hurts, I won't lie, but a price tag on a shiny mineral shouldn't define the foundation of a partnership. Dang, if she doesn't want it, someone else will eventually. Glad you called it off. She needs to get her priorities straightened out. My brother's ex-wife would always insist that I shouldn't accept a proposal from my then-boyfriend, now husband, unless it was a real diamond, no matter how many times I told her I didn't want a real diamond. She always said if it wasn't a real diamond, it wasn't good enough. I'm perfectly happy with my $900 lab-grown diamond and silver ring. Thank you very much. I doubt you need to hear this, OP, but a wedding is not a marriage. Good choice. You dodged a bullet. $20,000 for a ring? And not even a ring that was forged in the fires of Mount Doom. To your point, that's a car, a good chunk of a down payment on a house, or a really great trip to Europe. Some people do value their material goods and price tag above everything else. If that's their jam, then cool. Just something that everyone needs to be on the same page about. I'm sorry that you found out so late in the relationship. My fiancé used a laundry detergent I might be allergic to, so I changed my will. My fiancé and I recently bought a house together and received some basic things from his family as housewarming gifts. His grandmother gifted us a huge package of laundry detergent. This is where the problem starts. I have a severe allergy to most laundry detergents. I'm not talking about a mild itchiness or discomfort. This is much more serious. Exposure leads to me getting very sick, temporary loss of eyesight, and even unconsciousness. I've been hospitalized for this multiple times. We use two separate brands that I'm not allergic to. My fiancé keeps complaining, however, that they don't smell as good as what he's used to. This might be true, they aren't heavily fragranced, and I know he used to use a lot of fabric softener to get a strong scent on his clothes. I offered to slowly start trying new detergents because he kept complaining, and those two brands aren't easily accessible in his home country. But I also made it clear that this is not something I'm willing to do anytime soon, especially since I'm 8 months pregnant and terrified of the potential consequences. Besides, we still have more than enough of the safe brands to last for a while. He agreed, and I thought the topic was settled. However, his brother recently gifted us some baby clothes, and my fiancé kept commenting on how nice they smelled and how much he wanted our clothes to have the same fragrance. As I sorted through the clothes, I started to feel unwell. My hands felt strange, and my whole body just felt off. I realized that I was having a reaction, so I quickly washed any part of my body that had touched the clothes. From that point on, I refused to handle them without gloves, which my fiancé actually bought for me. So he definitely knows that my allergy is very much still an issue. Despite this, he decided to use the gifted laundry detergent on our towels. I didn't realize it until I started folding them and putting them away. My hands began to feel hot and numb, and an itchiness started to spread. At first, I thought maybe I had developed an allergy to one of the safe brands, but then I noticed the gifted detergent was open and tucked away in a corner. Our other two detergents are also open and readily accessible. I was shocked. This was completely avoidable. I texted him to ask him if he had used the gifted detergent. His response was, "Yes, what's the big deal?" I told him this wasn't funny and that he was putting both of us and our unborn son in jeopardy. I asked him why he thought now, of all times, would be a good time to test my allergy. He called me a drama queen and just ignored me. So I changed my will. Now, my fiancé gets nothing, not my share of the house, nor any other assets. Everything goes to my son, with my family as trustees until he's old enough. If something were to happen to both me and my son, my cousins would be the sole inheritors. My fiancé was originally supposed to be the trustee with guidelines in place to ensure a comfortable life for both him and our son. I discarded the old will, sent the new version to my lawyer to review, and planned to take it to a notary as soon as possible. When my fiancé got home, we had a rather uneventful conversation. He justified his use of the laundry detergent by saying he had only used it on cleaning towels mixed in with our regular towels. I asked why that mattered, as there were only 2 cleaning towels and over 10 regular ones in the load. And, as I pointed out, the smell of cleaning towels isn't exactly relevant since they aren't meant for personal use. He didn't answer and eventually just ignored me, which only confirmed that his excuse was nonsense. Part of me hoped for a better answer, but I knew it was pointless. From that point on, I became more withdrawn and I started watching his behavior more closely, hoping I might find some answer to his recent actions. After all, he was my best friend, and I didn't want to believe that I mattered so little to him. Soon after, there was another incident. I was carrying a heavy drawer back to its spot after a deep cleaning. Some mealworms I use as food for my pet spider had escaped in it. The drawer was really heavy and I struggled with it, but he was too busy working on some shelf to help. I asked where I should put the drawer since he was blocking the area it belonged in. He told me to put it on the floor, so I did. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that I had placed it on top of my vacuum's hose. Nothing was broken, but he completely lost his temper. He started going off on me, asking me if I could even use one brain cell. His words hurt more than I cared to admit. I started crying quietly and I went to the living room to calm down. Much later, he came over and got annoyed that I was still upset, insisting it was just a joke. I told him I didn't find it funny and that words can hurt. I asked if he could please just apologize. He refused, saying it was just a joke, and since we hadn't argued before, I shouldn't take it personally. He was completely dismissive. It didn't stop there. A short while later, I fell and scraped my knee and got a cut. I also began having mild cramps. I didn't have anyone to turn to in this country, so I called him, knowing his boss would likely let him leave early since he was scheduled to leave work in 30 minutes. He didn't answer my call, nor did he read my messages. He came home over an hour late, and it turned out he hadn't been at work at all. He had been visiting a friend to whom he had actually given the gifted laundry detergent. He helped me with my knee, but his attitude was shockingly cold. He told me to just lay down because I couldn't even walk right, and accused me of endangering our son. All I wanted to do was rest, so I laid down on the couch. He then decided to start vacuuming the house, despite the fact that I'd vacuumed and mopped the day before. He spent over 40 minutes cleaning the same spot near me, mumbling about how I hadn't cleaned and how messy I am. I admit I sometimes leave a shirt on a chair, but I clean every day, especially now that I'm on maternity leave. Our home is always presentable for visitors. After he finally stopped, he started questioning me about some mop parts that his grandmother had left here weeks ago. He kept asking what I was doing with them. I had no idea what he meant, so I told him that his grandmother had placed them by the vacuum. I was baffled by his implication that I never clean, especially since if he had bothered to vacuum once in the last few weeks, he would have noticed the mop parts himself. It felt like he was purposely trying to stress me out right when I was feeling my worst and only needed a nap. I don't recognize him anymore, and it's heartbreaking to admit that he doesn't seem to like me. Even our pets have sensed the change. Our cat now avoids him and reacts aggressively when he tries to pet him. Our beloved dog has started placing himself between me and my fiancé, following me around and trying to keep distance between us. The dog still wags his tail when my fiancé comes home, but it's not the same as it was before. His expressions are full of anger and contempt when he looks at me. I used to think he'd be my forever, but I can now see that he won't be. He loses his temper, hides his phone, and looks at me with disdain. I'm so drained that I don't even have the energy to go through his phone. Even if there were answers to his behavior there, I just don't care anymore. I'm only sad. I gave him back the engagement ring and he didn't even seem to care. My car's battery isn't working at the moment, so I'll need to figure that out, but I plan to leave. I'm 7 hours away from my family and 3 hours away from the border by car, so thankfully I don't have to fly. For now, I'm sleeping on the couch in the guest room. My ex-fiancé seems quite content with this arrangement, spending most of his time on his phone and mostly ignoring me. Update. I'm doing okay considering the circumstances. There were a few more arguments and a lot of stress and tears until I ended up in the hospital needing an emergency C-section. But my son is safe and I'm recovering. I reconnected with some old friends from school and university who came through for me even though I hadn't been in touch with them in a long time. To those who worried about my car battery being tampered with, I can confidently say it wasn't. I simply hadn't driven it in a while, and the cold winter weather affected it. Thankfully, we were able to jumpstart it. Custody, child support, and everything else will be difficult to arrange, but I'm staying hopeful. My ex-fiancé has shown very little interest in our son. He even admitted, "I guess I just don't like kids, even when they're my own." And he calls him annoying when he cries. I doubt he'll put up much of a fight for custody. My son and I are back home now, surrounded by love and support. I don't plan to keep him from his father, and I never will, but his father doesn't seem particularly interested. I don't think he was ready to become a parent, and considering his age, I doubt he ever will be. And yes, he is spending time with the woman I was never supposed to worry about, but I know for a fact that she wants to have kids and has been complaining about it to him. So who knows what's really going on between them. One thing for sure, I will never leave my home country for anyone ever again. Thank you all so much for your concern and support. This will probably be my last update. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that my life would be better without her in it? My wife, Anne, and I have been married for 13 years. I'm 43 and she's 46. We don't have any kids. When we first started dating, nobody could make me as happy as Anne. She always seemed to know the right thing to say when I was down. But over the past decade, she's really started to show her true colors, and some things her ex-husband said about her have begun to make more sense. For example, I have a very high-stress job where people bring me problems and I fix them. But when I get home, 9 times out of 10, Anne just piles on more issues. She doesn't work, so she has all day to solve things herself. Yet lately, she started making lists of tasks for me to do after my workday. My biggest issue, though, is that I can't ever truly open up to her. Whenever I mention something bad happened to me, she either tries to one-up me or sides with the person who wronged me. Last Friday, I had a terrible day. An enormous problem at work fell squarely on my shoulders. Later, while crossing the street, I had a green light, but a cyclist blew through a red and sideswiped me. He yelled at me and rode off. I thought about calling the police since it was technically a hit and run, but I doubted anything could be done. When I got home, I needed support. I told Anne what happened. She listened, but then immediately took the cyclist's side. I reminded her that he had run a red light, but she insisted cyclists aren't obligated to stop. When I disagreed, she began frantically Googling laws. She found out that, in our state, cyclists can treat red lights like stop signs, and she started reading it aloud, getting louder each time I tried to say I wasn't interested. When she finished, she looked at me with a self-satisfied expression as if she had proven some grand point. I stared at her for a moment and said, "My life would be better without you in it." She became furious, yelled until her voice went hoarse, then packed a bag and left to stay with her parents. She's been texting me all weekend demanding an apology, but I haven't responded. Did I do something unforgivable here? What did her ex say about her? OP. He called her a colossive, manipulative jerk. I nearly hit him when he said that to me. Honestly, if anyone deserves an apology here, it may be him. Sounds like the problem solved itself, actually. You said what needed saying, and she left. Done. Do you need help on first steps for contacting a lawyer or something? Because it sounds like you got her out of your house with minimal effort. Wait, if the cyclist is supposed to treat it like a stop sign, shouldn't they stop and yield to oncoming traffic? You, who had the green light? So she's wrong and still triumphantly claiming victory? Personally, I think you could have elaborated on how she sucks the life out of you, but that's just me being petty. I hope the best for you. Update 12 days later. After she left, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I didn't have someone nagging me over every little thing I did. I could eat my meals in whatever order I wanted. No lectures about pH balance, which she probably picked up from TikTok. I didn't have to wash my feet immediately after coming home. For the first time in ages, I could enjoy myself. Over the years, I'd noticed that she always got the most aggressive when I seemed especially happy or especially down. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to her ex. He was more than eager to discuss Anne, so we met up for drinks. It turns out, he and I had near identical experiences. Anne is, through and through, a pretty awful person, especially in relationships. He said his divorce was due to irreconcilable differences, not because of one specific incident, but from the realization that he genuinely couldn't stand her. During this time, Anne went silent, giving me the opportunity to visit a lawyer. Due to our state's laws and Anne being able-bodied and educated, my lawyer assured me the chances of her getting alimony are slim. After that, I called Anne. She still expected an apology for some reason. Instead, I told her I wanted a divorce. She threatened to take everything from me, but I replied that any further contact should be through my lawyer. I'm perfectly willing to split assets fairly. I'm betting Anne will agree to any deal that gives her more than half because that's just how she is. If it's a 55-45 split, I don't care. All I need to do is act like she got the better of me, and since she's not exactly perceptive, she'll probably take the deal happily. Am I the jerk for laughing at my ex's mother and telling her how much child support I've been receiving? My ex and I parted ways back in 2023, and since then, communication with him and his family has been rocky. He's shown little interest in providing for our kid, who's 6 years old, so I had to apply for child maintenance. He owes about £1,300, but has only managed to pay around £120 in total. My relationship with his parents has also been strained. Among other things, they asked me not to pursue child maintenance, claiming their son couldn't afford it. Needless to say, we're not on the best of terms. The situation escalated recently when his family found out about several concerts I planned to attend. I had posted about them on social media, though I'm not sure how they accessed the information since they don't have direct access to my accounts. At a recent drop-off, his mother confronted me, clearly upset over what she referred to as my concert nonsense. She accused me of wasting my ex's child support on myself, implying I was spending his money frivolously. I couldn't help myself and started laughing, which only made her more upset. Once she finished her rant and I composed myself, I told her that her son's child support contributions wouldn't even cover for travel expenses for one of these trips. I made it clear that I don't rely on his support to survive, as the amount isn't nearly enough to support both myself and our kid. I should have left it at that, but I added that we've received about £10 per month so far. Admittedly, I hadn't done the math. It's actually $11.09, but close enough. I mentioned that it barely covers the cost of the fruit my kid eats each month, so neither of them has any say in how I spend my own earnings. I work full-time, so the money I spend is my own. She called me a liar and stormed off. Now their whole family is upset with me, saying that I was rude and they expect me to apologize. They even called me a jerk for revealing the actual amount I receive, claiming it makes my ex look bad. My friends are split on the decision. Some found it hilarious and supported me for standing up for myself, while others think I went too far by mentioning the exact child maintenance amounts. In my defense, I honestly didn't think it was such a big secret. I assumed his mother didn't care about the specific amount, only the idea that I was receiving anything at all. Also worth noting, my kid didn't witness any of this. She was already indoors, and I'm sure I would have cut the conversation short if she had been present. So, am I the jerk for laughing and telling her how much I've been receiving? No. I told everyone about the £10 per month my kids were expected to live off to anyone who told me I was living off of my ex's hard-earned cash. If he's a deadbeat, make sure everyone knows about it, because I'm not going to work my butt off to maintain my kid's good lifestyle whilst he takes the credit for it. X was similarly upset because I set the record straight. Apparently, I caused his manliness hurts he feels or something I couldn't care less about. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Sounds like the ex's mom is mixing up child support with concert funding. If she thinks £10 a month should cover anything other than a snack, it's no wonder her son is in debt. A laugh was the perfect response to that nonsense. Maybe if they want a say in your finances, they should start contributing something other than complaints. Am I the jerk for telling my husband my birthday gift is terrible? I just turned 30, and my husband, who's 37, had his birthday 10 days before mine. Early on when we were dating, he mentioned that he received a Christmas card from an ex with a $20 bill inside, and that she often gave him unthoughtful gifts. I think he shared this to show he appreciates more thoughtful gestures. I had also told him I was really excited to turn 30. It's a milestone I've been looking forward to for a while. Because I know he likes gifts that show thought and effort, I went all out for his birthday. I arranged for my sister to watch our son and planned a romantic date night. We went to a speakeasy, which he loves, and then I surprised him with a picnic. I brought along drinks, a painting setup for us to get creative together, and some custom gifts I knew he'd love. For days afterward, he told me how it was his best birthday ever and how grateful he was. He said he felt so loved and special, which made me feel really happy. Now, with my birthday approaching, he kept raving about the gift he had gotten for me, saying I was going to love it. I have to admit, though, that I was a bit nervous. We both earn decent incomes, but he's never been the best at picking out gifts for me. That said, I appreciate his thoughtfulness even more than the gift itself. When he went on and on about how excited he was for me to get my gift, I started to worry. It ended up being delayed in shipping, which upset him a bit, but eventually it arrived. When I opened it, it was a blanket. Not a custom one or anything unique, just a big blanket for our family to snuggle under. Then, for the actual birthday celebration, he made reservations at a speakeasy sushi restaurant. It was nice and the food was great, but the place was very loud, almost like a club, so we could barely talk. For a bit of context, there are a few things about me that he knows well. First, I'm not big on snuggling. His love language is touch and mine isn't. I'm actually not a fan of being touched all the time, and snuggling isn't something I particularly enjoy. Secondly, we had our son 6 months ago, and my hormones are still all over the place, making me constantly hot. We live in San Diego, where it's still 85 degrees even at the end of October, so a massive blanket feels impractical right now. Lastly, I'm not a big drinker, which he also knows. I never have been, and on top of that, I have a hearing impairment, which makes it difficult to hold conversations in noisy environments like the restaurant he picked. I know it might sound bratty to feel this way when I do have a partner who put in effort into planning a date night out and got me a gift, but I just feel so unheard and unappreciated. I want to be honest with him about how I feel, but I also don't want to hurt his feelings. For the record, I have communicated my likes and dislikes to him very clearly in the past, even with photos and examples. I'm always upfront and direct about my preferences. Not the jerk. Clearly, he needs more help in knowing what to get you. This isn't about love languages or cuddling. He got you a blanket that isn't anything special for a birthday that you were very excited about. Did he even put thought into the blanket, or was he just concerned about his needs, or is it just the top 5 things in a Google search for birthday gifts for her? To me, his thought wasn't there. Am I the jerk for asking my employee to show up at their scheduled time? I, 30 female, own a bakery business, and my fiance's mother, who's 65, works for me as the primary baker. I've always offered her a flexible schedule and told her she could pick the hours she'd like to work. Our setup is in a kitchen within my home, so each week she lets me know what day and time she plans to come in for baking prep. She's often been late, but I've never complained or mentioned it to her. A few days ago, she told me she'd be coming in at 4:30 p.m. That wasn't a problem for me, so I got off work around 3:30 p.m. and began preparing dough for her to bake when she arrived. I even preheated the oven around 4 p.m. as it takes a while to heat up. Then at 4:20, she texted me saying she was going to dinner and would stop by afterward without giving an estimated arrival time. I didn't say anything or complain, just kept the oven on and decided to use the time to get a head start on the prep work. Since she was going to be late, I figured I'd just make the most of the time I had. She eventually showed up at 5:58. When she arrived, she asked why I was already baking, and I explained that I was simply trying to get ahead of the game rather than let the dough sit. She then asked if I had an issue with her being late. I assured her I didn't, but I did mention that next time it would help to have a 24-hour notice of when she plans to come in so I could plan my time accordingly. She responded by saying that she had an issue with it. Confused, I asked what she meant. She explained it felt insulting for me to start on what she considered her job. I clarified that I didn't mean anything negative by it, I was just trying to use the time efficiently. She replied that she just wanted to get her work done and suggested that we discuss it later. After a few hours, I went back into the kitchen, hoping to find a resolution. I gently asked how she was feeling and if she could take a short break to talk. She told me, "If you think there's an issue, you should speak first." I reiterated that I don't have an issue, but she had mentioned feeling uncomfortable, so I just wanted to understand. She repeated that it was insulting for me to start her work, and that since I had told her she could pick her hours, I needed to communicate if I had different expectations. I assured her that I was okay with her setting her own hours. I was only asking for her to arrive at the time she chose so I could plan my schedule accordingly. She then said, "Well, this is how I feel. I'm not the right person for this job. You are the way you are, and you can find someone else." My fiancé was in the other room and overheard everything. He was just as confused as I was. I went upstairs and cried. I've been close with his mom for years, and we've never had a disagreement. Our relationship has always been very positive, so this situation has left me feeling hurt and bewildered. Am I the jerk? I'm so confused. Everyone sucks here. If you're going to be a boss, then be a boss. You're literally letting her call the shots, telling you what to do and not caring that she's often late. Would you ever let any other employee do that to you, risking your business? She's taking advantage of you. She's disrespectful and rude. Please learn from this. You've given her free rein, and it hasn't worked out well for you. Next time, hire someone more responsible and pay them accordingly, preferably someone not related to you. Karen insists I share my Nintendo Switch with her brat. This just happened the other day, and after sharing this story with my friends and family, a few of them suggested that I share it here. The scene is a Southwest airline flight. I was sitting in a window seat next to 2 lovely ladies, and directly horizontal from us was an empty seat, a mom and her son. The flight was taking off. For those who don't know, you are required to stay seated and keep your seatbelts on for the beginning of the flight until the captain says otherwise. I was strapped in my seat and decided to take out my Nintendo Switch from my carry-on beneath my feet. "Excuse me, ma'am." I didn't realize at first that the mother in the seats horizontal from me was trying to get my attention. She unbuckled her belt and moved to the empty seat by my aisle, closer to me. "Ma'am, with the video game." I lifted my head, but the stranger next to me nudged me as well. "That lady wants you to get your attention," the woman next to me muttered. I turned my head to see this woman leaning across the aisle with her hands on the armrest of the aisle seat in my row. "Sorry," she began. "I just wanted to know if there was any way that my son could use that game for a little while." "I'm so sorry," I began. "My Nintendo Switch is just really important to me. I don't feel comfortable giving it to anyone I don't know. I don't even let my sister play with it." I was going to continue, but the woman cut me off. "Oh, my son's not like most kids," she replied. "He's not destructive. His cousin has one of these, and he knows how to play it." She smiled and set her hand out. The two women seated next to me looked at me as if they were also in disbelief. "I'm sorry," I said again. "I just don't feel comfortable with it. I bought it for me." "How old are you?" the woman said with a huff, retracting her hand and slapping it in her lap. "I'm 25, but I don't see how that matters," I replied, growing exceptionally uncomfortable. "Well," she began, clearly sounding agitated. "My son is 8. This is an hour and 45-minute flight, and he just wants something to do. He can't see it for a few minutes." "No, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm sorry, but I'm expecting you to understand since this is my property." I put my head down and I unpaused my game, as to ignore anything else that she had to say. "Are you serious?" She seemed genuinely livid. "Well, son, sorry buddy, not everyone knows how to share," the woman said to her kid who was next to her. Her kid started whining and kicking the seat in front of him. "Thanks for this," she said to me. "A sweet kid just wants to share with you, and you're being ignorant about it." Before I even opened my mouth, one of the ladies in my row snapped back at her. "How dare you bring that energy on this plane? She told you so kindly that she doesn't feel comfortable with passing her electronics to a stranger." The mother wasn't having it. "She's an adult and can't share with a kid for a few minutes of a nearly 2-hour flight?" "You should have brought something for him to do then," the woman in my row responded. It shut her up good. At the end of the flight, the woman collected her luggage from the overhead bins and said, "I hope you're happy going against God's word, not sharing with a kid." Some of the people around us giggled. I'm sure they all overheard the drama at the beginning of the flight. I've come across some entitled people in my life, but this strange lady took the cake. The perfect comeback at baggage would have been to ask the chapter and verse where this was going against God's word. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you have let the kid borrow your Nintendo Switch or not? Please let us know. "When someone keeps bugging me to borrow something, I just cough and sneeze all over it. Then I ask if they still want it. Works every time." Am I the jerk for making my boyfriend cry after I corrected him in front of his family? Hi. So my boyfriend, who's 22, and I, 22 female, have been having a really rocky few weeks. I started a new job, and I work with kids, and I'm exhausted when I come home from work, so I normally do homework and then game for a little. My boyfriend has been on this thing about how I never help out at the apartment or with the dog, which is fair. I definitely don't clean as much as I should, but I probably pick up the kitchen twice a week and let the dog out once a day. I always make sure his food and water dishes are full. I work 11-hour shifts, by the way, and I get up at 5 a.m. He doesn't work and plays video games literally all day long. He doesn't wake up until 11, and then he's on when I get home, and he's sure on when I go to bed. We just got back from his family dinner, and he was complaining to his mom about how he didn't know getting a girlfriend meant adopting a kid, my dog, and he was tired of looking after my dog. I told him it's funny he says he takes care of him when his food and water bowl were empty when I left and empty when I came home, and the dog ate and drank like his life depended on it. He said he fed him, but he definitely didn't. Then he said that he does a lot of other things, and I said, like what? Walk him? Take him to the bathroom? Because he has accidents all the time, but never on the weekend when I'm home. He started stammering and saying he did a lot with the house, and I sort of just snapped and told him I could see him on games for 12 hours a day while I worked to provide for us. He didn't say anything, just got up and left. His mom said she was sorry, and if I needed help to let her know. His dad said I'm being too hard on him, and I'm going to drive him away. Edit. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. I think I'm a jerk because of the harshness and environment this conversation happened in. I heard him crying, and he's complete stonewalling me, and I feel really guilty about embarrassing him in front of his parents. Edit 2. Please stop saying my dog needs to be rehomed. I normally put water in his dish in the mornings and food, just not today because I was running late. My issue is with my boyfriend claiming to do things that I do or he just doesn't do. I walk the dog after work, I run him hard on the weekends, he gets playtime and he's healthy. I promise the dog is happy. He didn't have food for one day, and my boyfriend happened to comment on how hard it was to take care of a dog, so I called him out for not even feeding him the one day I missed it. Not the jerk. Why make the effort to drive him away? End the relationship now and hire a dog walker. Rehome the boyfriend, keep the dog. Not the jerk. Oh look, another typical 2022 boyfriend. Spends all his time playing video games and being a loser while his girlfriend has to work hard to keep a roof over his head. I swear I'm so done with dating. It's impossible to find a decent guy these days. Every guy I've ever dated was a complete loser with nothing going for him. I guess I could find a guy with a stable job if I was willing to lower my standards and be with someone who's not even attractive, but why should I have to do that? Most of my friends have given up on guys and are now dating girls exclusively, which is probably what I'll end up doing too. Yowza, I see a whole lot of cats in your future. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Does boyfriend's diet consist primarily of Doritos and Mountain Dew? A gamer's got to eat. Am I the jerk for not allowing my daughter to quit competitive dance? I, 30 female, have a daughter, Lily, who's 14. We just moved states, husband is in the army, and she'll be going to a new school soon, and she's deciding on her new subjects. She did French last year and did extremely well, was way ahead in her class, but she spent a lot of time after school studying for that one language. She said she had fun doing it, doubtful, and enjoyed it very much. I need to add that Lily does competitive dance, which means that she doesn't have much time left after school. I did competitive dance as a kid, and I know how hard it is to find time for studying. She came to me the other day telling me that her new school doesn't offer French, but they offer Spanish, and she wanted to take it, and asked me if I could sign her up to private French lessons so that she can learn both languages. I told her that absolutely not, that with her dance, she won't have time for that, and it's too difficult of a subject, taking up too much of her time. She told me that she hasn't been enjoying dance for a while and was too scared to tell me, but she wants to quit dance. She told me that she wants to study languages and work with that when she's an adult. I told her that she won't be quitting dance because she's too good at it, and I already put in a lot of money and that she doesn't need to know other languages. She'll get by with English just fine. Of course, as teenagers do, she threw a fit and ran to her room. She accused me of living vicariously through her. When did a 14-year-old learn that phrase though? And I grounded her for it. She hasn't talked to me since this morning. My husband came back from work and asked me what happened, and I explained to him that she told me that I should consider letting her quit dance, that languages are a useful skill. Apparently, they always look for people who speak languages, and it'll be better than dance for her future. I told him I didn't want to talk to him anymore and called my sister to vent. Surprisingly, my sister took my husband's and Lily's side, and she joked that I should post here if I don't believe her. So I decided to give it a try. Am I the jerk for not allowing my daughter to quit dance and take language classes instead? You're not listening to your kid's interests. She told you what she likes. You don't believe her, her dad, or your own sister. Hopefully you believe countless people who think you are the jerk, and a huge jerk at that. I couldn't believe that. She put tons of extra hours in and did really well in French, but mom still doesn't believe she could have enjoyed it. Just because OP loves dance and hates learning new languages doesn't mean her daughter will be the same. Knowing more languages is certainly a better career path than pro dancing. So 2 people told you that you're in the wrong here and you're seeking people to agree with you. Stop living your personal dreams through your daughter. What is your end goal for her? Something you couldn't achieve? She already told you she doesn't want to continue dance. Time and money, your unfulfilled dreams, all on your daughter's back. Do you know what normal parents do when their kid decides they don't enjoy sport anymore? They allow them to quit and focus on something they love. Your daughter is going to resent you forever. You're the jerk. Not the jerk. Going against the grain here, but I don't think you're the jerk for this. I used to play golf professionally, even won a few big tournaments. Golf was my life, even how I met my wife. She was working an event I competed in during college. Naturally, I wanted my son to follow in my footsteps. When your dad is a professional golfer, you have a world of opportunity that most kids never would. When he was growing up, I spent a fortune on his lessons, top-of-the-line equipment, training camps, you name it. My boy ended up getting a full-ride scholarship thanks to his golf talent, and I couldn't have been more proud of him. We threw a huge celebration for him, and there were even some big names in golf that came to the house. A few weeks before he was supposed to leave for college, he broke down one night and told me this wasn't what he really wanted. His dream was to go into the army, which some recruiters at his school had tricked him into thinking was a good idea. I can't even begin to describe how disappointed in him I was. We had a huge fight about it. I told him if he makes this stupid decision to never speak to me again. He didn't, and he shipped out later that month. He gave up his scholarship and all the opportunity that would have come with it, so I never spoke to him again after that. As far as I was concerned, I had no son. In 2011, he went missing in Afghanistan. My wife is in denial and thinks we'll hear from him someday, but I know he's gone. I can feel it, an emptiness I can't even describe. Why couldn't my boy have just played golf? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know. Force your kids to do things they don't like and they'll always resent you for it. Find out what their passion is and then support them in it. What if their only passion is playing video games and watching anime all day? Then that would make them my spirit animal. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my daughter's tuition after she lied about her major? I'll keep this short. My daughter, who is 19, told me she was going to college to major in computer science. I was ecstatic about this because she's been set on majoring in illustration. For years, I've been trying to talk her out of it. I know she loves illustration, but it's extremely hard to get a steady job from that. I wanted her to do something she could be successful in. I want her to have a wider range of opportunities. As it turns out, she lied to me. She's majoring in illustration. She got some mail about some art exhibition at her school. I thought nothing of it at first because I knew that she was a computer science major. After looking into it a bit more, I found out her work was chosen to be displayed in the exhibition. I was furious. I've spent tens of thousands of hard-earned money for her computer science. That's what we agreed on. I told her she can do what she wants, but I will not support her. She can pay for it herself or get her mother to pay. Or she could begin to pay me back for the money she stole from me interest-free. My wife said I'm being unreasonable, that she's only 19, and asking her to pay for her own tuition is asking too much of her. I don't think it was, as I agreed to pay for her to study computer science, nothing else. I was also giving her a chance to make what she did right. I was deceived and my money was going towards something I had no say in. Now my wife and daughter are upset with me. I'm starting to reflect and think maybe I could have been nicer about the situation. You're the jerk. Firstly, dang. If I had parents like you, I would go no contact real quick. Talk about critical and unsupportive. Second, her work is being displayed at an exhibition. Do you know how big that is? It means not only is she pursuing her passion, she's good at it. I'm also not entirely sure you understand the illustration industry. Stable jobs are the norm in it. One of my friends is an illustrator for Scholastic. He started working for them at age 21 and has been with them ever since. He's now 34. It pays very well and he lives very comfortably, even with 2022 prices. It's competitive and in high demand right now, not to mention the degree can get her a job not only illustrating, but in graphic design, animation, production design, etc. You messed up, bud. You have a very slim window to make this right, and I suggest you take it, because if you don't, she's gone. Former advisor here who helps students find their best fit major. 1. You can no more pick your kid's major than you can choose whom they date and they marry. Sure, maybe her life would be easier with a rich partner, but her heart belongs to illustration. 2. A long-standing interest is unlikely to change. She's been dating. She's ready to marry this career path. 3. You would have wasted your money paying for a degree she didn't want. If she didn't want to study it for 4 years, what makes you think she wants to do it all day, every day for the rest of her life? Statistically, she'd almost certainly have dropped out or changed paths within 5 years. I appreciate you want to set your kid up for success. I get it. If she doesn't find a job, she won't curl up in a fetal position and cry. She'll keep looking and make her way, by and by, just like all the other adults, especially if she has support. Either way, she isn't going to be a computer engineer. Let her self-actualize, and don't offer to pay for the wedding only if you choose a different groom, dude. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. My dad did the same thing to me. Guess what? We don't talk anymore. Trying to control your daughter is a surefire way of losing her. Her work is being displayed in an exhibition. If it were my daughter, I would be sure to have a front row seat. If you keep this up, you're gonna lose your daughter. Apologize and start listening to what she wants, what her hopes and dreams are, then become her biggest cheerleader. Not the jerk. What's wrong, bro? Don't want your sweet little angel to end up waiting tables for pennies or mixing my drinks at Starbucks? All jokes aside, I don't blame you at all. I've paid for 2 of my kids' higher education, and both of them went into fields I approved of. And guess what? They both make over $100K a year now. My youngest has been telling me she isn't planning on going to college and insists on becoming a model/influencer instead. I told her straight up, "Darling, you'll never be the next Kim Kardashian. Your face looks way too much like mine. And if you don't follow my lead and make good decisions, you'll be out of my house the day you turn 18. It helps that my wife backs me up. As parents, it's our duty to set our kids up for success. Fail at that, and they'll be spending their days commenting here on Reddit, competing for who can be the biggest victim and attacking people like you who have common sense." Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. Could be worse. At least she's not majoring in philosophy. Isn't that what you majored in, Karen? Exactly, and look at me now. I'm stuck in this room with you all day. You want me to leave your pizza on your doorstep without paying for it again? This was, and still is, my personal favorite story of malicious compliance delivered by yours truly. I'm a few brewskis deep, so I apologize for any grammar mistakes. Backstory. This particular customer's address and phone number still haunts me to this day because they either full-on stiffed me or underpaid me every single delivery I ever made for them, and they were on the very edge of our delivery area, 20-mile radius. I was around 20 to 22 years old. I drove a 1988 Jeep Cherokee as a pizza delivery vehicle for a company whose logo is a very popular table game in the US prison system. Tips were very important to my survival as an employee, as they literally paid for the gas I needed to do my job because the company refused to pay gas mileage. But I did the smart thing and kept track and used that for a significant deduction on my taxes. Save your receipts if you use your personal vehicle for work. Fuel, fluid change, brake pads, etc. My manager and I are rolling up and getting ready to call it a night after a dead shift when the phone rings 2 minutes before closing time. It's that family, calling for their 2 veggie pizzas with grilled chicken. The owners of this franchise have full access to the call logs in store, so they know if we don't answer before closing and take the order or it's firing time. I proceed to drive the 20 minutes to their house to find out they aren't home. They always pay in cash, exact change or less. I call the number they have listed for deliveries. Hear the home phone ringing. Yeah, landlines were still a thing. Ask your parents if you don't know what that is. No answer. Okay, try the secondary number. Voicemail. So I figure I'll go back to the Jeep with the pizzas still in the heat bag to make sure they stay safe and warm while I call the manager to see what I should do. He answers, and I quote, "You aren't gonna like this. They want you to leave the pizza on the doorstep because you didn't get it there fast enough, so they went to the pizza place down the street from their house." Me, on the doorstep? Okay. My poor shoes, my poor shoes that night. I had white DC courts. In a fit of pizza-driven rage, I dumped that veggie pizza face down on their doorstep, and I waffle stomped it permanently into their exposed aggregate concrete and used the box to scoop up what was left to wipe it all over their front door. I left with a feeling of meaningful bliss, and when I got back to the store, we permanently blacklisted that address and phone number. If someone is using their time, fuel, and life to bring you food, just tip them. Had to redo an emergency drill at sea because too much of it was simulated. Corrected the mistake the next time around. I was in the military underway on a ship, and we had to periodically do drills. Think fire alarm, man overboard, abandoned ship, etc. And as we geared up for an outside inspection team to visit, we'd be run and grade them ourselves to see what we'd need to improve upon to pass inspection. We were in the middle of a long patrol, and we were running a man overboard drill. Part of this drill is that when a man overboard alarm sounds, you're supposed to throw a life ring over the side of the ship towards the person in the water to give them something to hang on to and to help mark the position where they were in the water so that the ship could more easily find them to pick them up. Simple enough. As a side note, when running drills, there are various ways to mark what things are off limits or should be simulated. We would use blue tape. So blue tape would go over the real international distress signals for a drill, the long-range radios, etc. So we knew we had to just simulate those things. If we were doing a part of these responses and we saw something with blue tape, we'd kind of narrate, and now I'd use the radio to alert our parent command, etc. So we run the man overboard drill. The ship maneuvers to pick up the fake man overboard, a dummy named Oscar, named for the name of the flag you hoist when you have a man overboard, in pretty quick time. However, during the debrief, the ship's executive officer, second in command, also head of the training team, berates the crew because no one threw life rings over the side as per policy. We would have failed the drill if we were at a real inspection, he says. He said that a bunch of crew members went up to the life rings and then stated, "And now I'd throw a life ring," to the training team members watching, rather than actually doing it. If there isn't blue tape on it, then you can't self-simulate, the XO says. and we're going to run the drill again until we get it right. What happened next was a brilliant moment of a group, without consulting each other, executing some malicious compliance. We run the drill again. Oscar goes over the side, and the man overboard alarm is sounded. The ship had, I believe, 9 life rings on the outside decks. They started going over the side, one after the other. I think we got 8 of them over the side before the XO got on the loudspeaker and said, "Stop throwing life rings!" But the damage had been done. I do wish we would have gotten the last one over, but alas. At the end of the drill, the ship spent the next 2 to 3 hours tracking down life rings with flashing strobes, each floating different directions away from the ship on the open ocean. It was lots of fun since we got to maneuver the ship around a ton and just enjoy driving it rather than having to do anything worthwhile. But the XO was none too pleased since it delayed our patrol schedule a little bit. But the good news was we passed the drill and certainly didn't simulate anything, so he couldn't say anything about it. Am I the jerk for kicking my sister out of my wedding when she happens to be a bridesmaid for my fiancé? Me, 26 male, and my fiancé Kenzie, who's 27 female, are getting married this fall. She asked my sister to be a bridesmaid, and they have really bonded over it. I don't speak to my mother, and I haven't since I was 16. Not a word. She does reach out still, but I block her number. When I was 13, I came home early from school to find another man in our house. My mom then proceeded to lie about who the dude was and told me not to say anything to my father. I was always closer with my dad than my mom. She kept buying me things for days and reminded me to not say anything, but I told my dad what I saw. My dad flipped and they got divorced. My mom then decided to live with the guy I saw in our house. Unfortunately, she got split custody, so I was forced to spend time over there with my sister. Usually just locked myself in my room and only came out to get food. I purposely fought with her boyfriend to force my way to live solely with my dad. My sister got upset at my attitude towards the situation and we had a falling out. Eventually, when I was 15, my mom broke down and let me live with my dad full time. My sister kept a strong relationship with my mom and her boyfriend, while I haven't spoken to my mom since the day she drove me to my dad's. She kept reaching out once I was there, but I blocked her, which upset my sister even more. We didn't speak after I went away for college. A year ago, however, she invited me to her wedding and wanted to catch up. Kenzie made me go to the wedding. I'm glad I went though, because we got some things healed. We started getting closer again, and now my sister is involved in our lives. But what happened last week is why I kicked her out of the wedding. I learned through my sister's husband that my sister has a plan to bring my mom as her +1 for the wedding. Her husband is going to be out of town, and she thought it would be fine to bring my mom. I asked Kenzie if she knew about this plan, and she said she didn't, but that I should go easy on my sister because she just wants my mom there, and my mom is pressuring her. But I flipped, called my sister, and she said I needed to get over what happened. Mom was really sorry and just wanted to be there on my big day, and was devastated to learn she wasn't being invited to her only son's wedding, that she thought it would be a fun surprise for me. I told her she knew I was estranged from mom, and that it was incredibly rude and sneaky what she was going to do. Since I could no longer trust her, she wouldn't be invited anymore. Kenzie is upset because I kicked out one of her bridesmaids and thinks I should give my sister another chance. But I never fully trusted my sister after I learned that for years she was feeding my mom info about my life when I specifically said not to. So this was her second time doing something shady. Am I the jerk? Edit. My fiancé talked to me about inviting my mom to the wedding. I caught them texting each other. My mom ranting off some sob story and Kenzie eating it up. So I think Kenzie is fine with her coming and might have even supported my sister's plan. She's been pushing me to talk to my mom for years. She thinks it's been long enough, but I don't see value in having scumbags around my life. Once my mom cheated, she was basically done to me. Not the jerk. I'm a wife whose husband does not speak with his mom. She was definitely not invited to our wedding, his decision, and his relationship with her is 100% his own decision and not my business. If I would have invited her or been aware of a plot to have her in attendance, he would have been so hurt and betrayed. Your fiancé should have had your back and respected you enough to be no contact with your mother as well. Not the jerk, but the real problem here is your fiancé not listening to you and respecting your boundaries. I feel really terrible for OP. Everyone around him thinks they know what's best for him, and even worse, they only care about their comfort over his. OP, you get to decide if you ever want to be in your mother's presence again, no one else. From an outside perspective, this is about trust and stability that you had ruined when you were a kid. Your mother tried to steamroll you into silence, and now your fiancé is doing the same. Put your brakes on your wedding and have a sincere conversation with your fiancé, and if possible with a therapist, about how all of them disregard your feelings and boundaries. I don't know if your fiancé is just plain naive, which isn't an excuse to ignore your feelings, or if you ended up with another woman in your life who thinks they know more than you about you. Entitled friend learns to choose their words carefully. Backstory. I had a friend who we'll call Josh, which is obviously not his actual name. Josh and I had been friends since we were young. Turns out, liking Transformers, wrestling, and Hot Wheels makes it really easy to make friends in elementary school, or primary school for those on the other side of the Atlantic. Josh originally was a pretty good guy, but his parents had issues with one another and eventually split up. His mother remarried and his stepfather began to spoil Josh rotten. Josh began to become a lot more antagonistic, and we grew distant as the years went on, but I tried to remain friendly with him, hoping he'd eventually see the error of his ways. He went through multiple relationships, all of them ending by his hand, but I was unaware as he only spoon-fed me information and made the other party look like they were in the wrong. The incident. Josh had recently had a breakup with a girl who we'll be calling Megan, who I was friendly with before the breakup. Whilst I was worried about Megan due to us being friends, I stupidly decided to check on Josh first. Now, I had let Josh borrow stuff from me, including multiple gaming consoles, clothes, and even a few bits of furniture. I tried to be a good friend, but I didn't know that I was being taken advantage of. We had decided to order some pizza, and Josh had unwittingly ordered from local pizza, where Megan worked. Local pizza doesn't deliver. Josh persuaded me to go and get the pizza. In reality, he basically demanded it because he was too lazy to drive that way. I decided to bite the bullet and just drive my way to the local pizza and walked inside. Lo and behold, I met with Megan, who was on break at the moment. Megan and I spoke about things and the topic of Josh came up. It was busy and our order wasn't even done yet, so I didn't mind stopping to chat until Megan began to tell me her side of things. It turned out Josh had been a major jerk to Megan until Megan's brother, Drake, stepped in and pulled his sister out of the relationship. Drake had been a friend as well, but Josh had fed me lies, so I stopped speaking to Drake. I didn't want to believe Megan at first until she called Drake, who corroborated her story. It was a lot to swallow. Josh's breakups began to make a lot more sense now, and I felt sick. Was I friends with a horrible person? I asked Megan some questions, and she told me her side of the story and ended up calling out a lot of Josh's flat-out lies. After the pizza was done, I promised Megan that I'd talk to Josh about this as someone who'd been close to him for years. She thought that maybe I'd be able to get through to him. Oh, were we both wrong. I got back to Josh's and just spoke about things until I managed to get on the topic of Megan. I mentioned to him that we spoke and what she had said. Big mistake. He got angry and called Megan a lying jerk and declared that I shouldn't believe her. I told him that Drake corroborated her story and that I was going through a lot of stress trying to make heads or tails of all of this. Josh, now absolutely livid, screams at me.
Shut up! Get out! You wanna believe them? Take your stuff and go.
I was shocked. I tried to say something, but Josh cut me off.
I said get out. Take your stuff and get out of my house. You wanna believe her and that stupid brother of hers? Fine. Tell everyone how much of a horrible person I am. Let's see who believes you.
Malicious compliances. Yep, you read that right, dear reader. Compliances, plural. Now, whilst I'm not a big fan of confrontation, I also despise being yelled at. He wants me to take my stuff and go? So be it. I just give him an, okay Josh, I'll take my things and go. So I began to take it all back. Gaming consoles, clothes, and I even grabbed the stand-up mirror I'd let him borrow ages ago. He tried to stop me multiple times, but I simply pushed past him and reiterated his words. He wanted me to shut up, grab my things, and go. So I did. PS2 I let him borrow? Taking that back. GameCube he borrowed so he could play some games he got at a thrift store. That's mine. Taking that home. I took everything that was mine, packed it into my car, and ignored him as he screamed, ranted, and raved at me, threatening to call the police. I simply dared him to, as I was only taking back my things. When I left, I called Megan and Drake and told them what happened. They said they had my back in case things went awry after this. Then I let them in on the second thing he said.
Tell everyone how much of a horrible person I am.
Okay, Josh, bet. Megan, Drake, and I went through our contacts for anyone who knew Josh and told them what happened. One of these people was Josh's own mother, who was absolutely livid at him as Josh was living in his home on his mother and stepfather's dime. The fallout. Josh's reputation pretty much collapsed out from under him as evidence came to light, and Josh's various exes, emboldened by Megan and Drake coming out with their stories, began to spread their own stories on what had happened. Josh's friend circle turned on him rather quickly, finding out how much of a jerk he actually was. What made all of this worse for Josh was all of these stories had evidence, such as text, camera footage, and audio recordings, all of this evidence making it obvious that those Josh heard weren't lying. Josh's mother and stepfather ended up pulling his sizable allowance due to this, and he couldn't afford his home, so he was forced to move back in with them. Josh and I still don't talk anymore, and he had to sell off a lot of his furniture and personal possessions to pay off the debt he had managed to rack up after his allowance was pulled. I've heard that Josh has changed and is getting better, but after this crap he put me through, I'd rather be keeping my distance. My sister complains about her life, so I gave her a piece of my mind. To start this off, I'm going to give you some context as to why she did and why I didn't pity her. I, 28 female, have a sister Caitlin who is 1 year older than me. Growing up, we were dirt poor. Our family nailed almost every single southern hillbilly idea on the head. We both did decently, but neither of us had ever considered college. Caitlin graduated high school first and got a full-time job immediately. She began to help with bills, but at some point began thinking about maybe going to school. I was having the same thoughts a year later when I graduated. Well, what we hadn't known was that when our great-grandma passed, she left my dad all that she had, which came up to a sum of a couple $1,000s that they decided to save for us. And because Kate began talking about maybe going to school, Mom began to save her bill money and add it to the sum of the money. Unfortunately, it still wasn't a lot, so our parents sat us down and explained that they had money for only one of us to go to school, and that they would have to think about who to give it to. I was prepared to fight for this chance because I realized that was my chance to better myself. I was ready to do whatever it took, but I didn't end up needing to because Kate gave up. I guess Caitlin realized she wouldn't be picked because I had better grades and was more well-liked, because Mom told me later that day that she had backed down and said to give it to me. So fast forward, I got my BSN and work as a travel nurse. I do very well for myself and live 2 hours away from my hometown. I went to visit my sister because she's pregnant with my nephew, and I missed her and brought some gifts. We had lunch and we were just chatting about what we were up to when she began to complain and whine that she was tired and asked if I didn't mind if she vented. Before I could answer, she started talking about how she was tired all the time from her shifts at work and then having to come home to her kids and her husband. It sounded a lot like she was regretting her life, and after about 20 minutes, it was starting to get on my nerves. She would not stop or change topic. Finally, I lost it and told her that I wasn't here to listen to her complain and that she really shouldn't complain about the life she chose. I told Caitlin that if she didn't want to have to get married and have a low-paying job, and if she wanted to better herself, she should have fought harder to go to college instead of giving up before she even tried. It ended in her crying, which I felt horrible about, and then she went home without saying anything else. I tried apologizing for how I phrased it, but not for anything I actually said because it was true, but she won't accept it. Our parents have been giving me the cold shoulder, and I feel lost because they won't listen to my side of what I said. Am I the jerk here? You're the jerk. You're a nurse? I hope you show more compassion in your job than you do to your sister. You wrote that your parents are mad at you and won't listen to your side. What is your side? I just reread your post and I can't see it. Your sister seems like a generous soul who needed to vent. Nothing you reported that she said indicates she was blaming you for her situation. Do you always make everything about you? OP, have you ever thought that your sister might have backed down and surrendered college to you because she wanted her little sister to be able to go? Wanted her little sister to have a better shot at a good life because she already had a full-time job and it's easier for her to keep the job than letting you find one when she would go to college? Yes, you didn't ask for it. You were prepared to fight. Your sister probably knew how badly you wanted to go to college and let you have it. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. You clearly stated your sister got a job right away and helped with bills. You guys grew up dirt poor, and yet you don't have a single ounce of empathy for her situation. It's not a life she chose. People born in poverty get less chances. It's a fact. You got lucky, and it turned you into an entitled jerk, which is pathetic. You were given a chance that she was not, so you have no excuse to become a worse person. You're the jerk. Just reading your post, the tone you use, everything about it makes me rage. Before she gave up, you were ready to fight for tooth and nail? She knew you had a better chance of making it and stepped aside. She didn't do anything. You go to lunch with her, and she has to ask if it's okay to talk to you like a sister would? Then you get tired of listening to her for 20 minutes? You then proceed to tear into her. She wanted to confide in you, not get a lecture. You know why you are where you are today? Because you have an older sister that was willing to put her dreams away for you to have an opportunity. Sure, you worked hard to get to where you are, but Caitlin cleared the path for you. You owe her a huge apology for acting like an absolute jerk to her. You're not the jerk for saying the truth. You're the jerk because if you're just so much smarter and better than her, you easily could have phrased everything better in a more mature way. I feel for the clients you have been to. I guarantee that you are the reason for all these healthcare horror stories. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. Bruh! My creepy friend put a tracker on my phone. What should I do? I, 21 female, and my friend, 21 male, are home from college. We went to different high schools, but we were friends through clubs and extracurricular. We had a friend group senior year that we both hung out in. The friend group fell apart, but we stayed somewhat in touch and see each other a few times each summer for lunch to catch up. Anyways, we were on the phone about 2 weeks ago and made plans to chill, grab pizza and listen to music. We were Snapchatting old friends, and he snapped some of them back through my phone. I don't think much of handing my phone to him to reply. I mean, I've been friends with this guy for a while now, and we've hung out, so we're like decently close, I guess. The other day, he texted, joking about how I need a better sleep schedule since I was up till 4 a.m. I laughed it off and said, yeah, I was up till 6 a.m. studying. I asked him how he knew, and he just laughed it off and made a joke. I didn't think much of it, because I know Instagram and Snap sometimes shows when you were last active on the app. Anyways, today, he texts me joking that I need to charge my phone. I was at 2% and was weirded out by how he knew that. Again, he just laughed it off and made a joke. I was like, what? Did you share my location or find my iPhone? He said no and said that he'd explain it tonight. We had plans to grab food. I was kind of weirded out, but he kept joking. I check Find My iPhone and locations and nothing is shared. I then realized that on Snap he had ghost mode disabled and shared my location with himself. When I asked him about it, he denied it and he didn't admit it until I sent him a screenshot. I expressed how weird that was, but he was joking about it and saying see you later. I've been ignoring his calls and texts since, and he's spamming apologies. I was talking to one of my friends, 21 female of our mutual friend group, and she was weirded out at first, but laughed it off. She said it's weird, but he was clearly just messing around, and I'm being a major jerk for blowing it up when it was totally harmless, and that I was being a jerk for ignoring his calls and apology texts because he clearly didn't mean it since he's panicking that I'm mad. I'm not necessarily mad, I'm just totally weirded out, and I feel like my privacy has been invaded the past 2 weeks. I don't know how to feel. Not the jerk. I'd feel completely creeped out and stalked. I hope your phone notifies you when he decides to hide an AirTag in your car. OP. I literally made a joke about being AirTagged, and he texted back saying, LMAO, imagine. I literally said I wouldn't put it past you. Like, even if I forgave, I don't think I could ever feel comfortable again. Not the jerk. Stalking is never something you should blow off, and it's not harmless. You need better friends. Right? This is a huge red flag. Now he's trying to get out of it by being funny and charming. That's how creeps always get away with their crappy behavior. OP. You're right. I've been ignoring all calls and texts. In the beginning, I figured he wants to apologize and felt bad for ignoring someone trying to reconcile and apologize. But it's been nearly 2 hours, and all he has texted me was, I'm sorry, please don't gate me. You're making me nervous. Hello, a picture of his dog, and I'll pay for lunch. I would have at least expected some long text apologizing and saying how he regrets his actions and how it wasn't a funny joke. Unless sharing your location shares your battery life, that's not all he did to your phone. This is where I'm at. How does he know the battery life? OP. When I first questioned him about it, after showing him the Snapchat screenshot, he said it was a feature and offered to show me when we go grab food later. Safe to say, we never grabbed food. But a lot of people have said it's not a feature on Snapchat, so now I'm worried he put something else on my phone. You know he wasn't planning to tell you, right? You weren't supposed to find out. He was planning to trail you until you had to replace your phone and then get a hold of your new one to put a tracker in that. Not the jerk. He's not your friend, and you need to distance yourself for your own safety. OP. I expressed that to a mutual friend, and she said he made jokes in indication of it with the get a better sleep schedule and charge your phone comments. And like, I can kinda see where she's coming from, but I think we're both just in shock by his actions that we're trying to rationalize it somehow. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you forgive your friend or not? Please let us know. No way. I'd rather not end up stuck in the trunk of a beat-up old Saturn deep in the woods on a dog-cold night. New manager takes away overtime and working through lunches? Okay, sure. I worked for a large brokerage firm as an hourly employee. Every day I worked through lunch and did at least 1 hour overtime in order to handle the heavy workload my team received. The extra hour of overtime was beyond normal business hours, but I would also get another 45 minutes of overtime for working through lunch. Not only me, but the 3 other people on my team did this as well. We were all fine with it, as the overtime pay really helped us out, and we were able to leave work with our tasks for the day completely finished. The tasks were super repetitive, so there was really no fear of burnout from us. The thing about working as an hourly employee at this company was that we would have to clock out for lunch for at least 15 minutes, even if we worked through the determined hour of it. Again, this was completely cool with us all, as the overtime pay more than made up for 15 minutes of lost pay each day. This system worked really well for about 2 years, but then we got a new manager. He was the jerk, make everything as efficient as possible kind of guy, and we knew that he was going to come after our overtime pay. The best part about him becoming the manager is that he knew absolutely nothing about the jobs we do. He was completely clueless about the department as a whole and how high our workflows were. 3 weeks into this new manager starting, he calls a meeting for us all and says that no matter what, we should be taking an hour lunch every day and we should be doing no overtime. While it seemed like a nice thing for him to do to give us a break, he clearly was coming after our overtime pay. I had questions, such as how he expected everything to get done every day without the working through lunch and overtime we put in. His response was, "We hired you all for 40-hour weeks, so that is what you will work for. Anything more is practically stealing from the company." So there goes our overtime pay. From that day forward, I took the hour-long lunch and made sure to have at least one other teammate tag along. I also began leaving precisely on time every day once my time was completed, regardless of how much work still had to be done. As you may have guessed, things started to back up big time. Our manager started to sweat, asking why we were so backed up, and I sat there saying that we can only do so much in a 40-hour work week. This continued for about 2 to 3 months, and then we randomly received an email from our boss's boss saying that overtime was allowed again and that 1-hour lunch breaks were no longer mandatory, but that they recommend we still do. Instead of hiring more people to help with the backup of tasks, giving overtime to people who were already trained was clearly the better option in this situation, and it was also much cheaper. At least someone in management had some sense before it got too out of hand. Edit. Fail to put that we did have multiple mandatory 15 to 20 minute breaks throughout the day that I did take. Thank you to those who have pointed that out. Apparently, I'm getting fired for upgrading someone. Last night, I was alone on second shift. We're sold out of standard kings online, but somehow a very high-tier rewards member is able to book one with points. I catch it pretty much as soon as he makes it at about 8:30 p.m. Slight moment of panic, then I realize I can upgrade him to a bigger room with a bigger bathroom. Cool, problem solved. He checks in pretty soon after. I give him his keys, he goes to the room and comes right back down. He says, and I quote, "So, since I get a handicapped room, that means I can take one of the handicap spots, right?" I laughed and thought he was joking. He was not joking. It's important to remember that this room is an upgrade that just so happens to have a roll-in shower, which is much bigger than a regular shower, and a separate oversized jacuzzi tub. The only thing handicapped about it is the roll-in shower. Literally, that's it. So anyway, he was not joking about taking the handicap parking spot. I told him that he definitely could not do that without a handicap decal. I explained to him that we were sold out and that the room he originally booked we didn't have, so I gave him a bigger room. It's literally an upgrade. His response is something along the lines of,
So you put me in a handicapped room, even though I'm a very high tier rewards member, but I can't take a handicapped parking spot? Okay.
By that point, I was out of patience. I really have a low tolerance for BS, and honestly don't know how I've lasted in customer service for 12 years. So I just told him that if he took one of those parking spots, that I'd immediately have his car towed. Up until this point, he's been standing closer to the front door on his way out, but once I tell him I'd tow his car, he comes over to the desk, takes out his phone, leans over the desk, puts his phone in my face, and says he's gonna take my picture. Now I'm like actually over it, so I told him, "You're not about to take my picture." Did he get a picture of me? I don't know. Honestly, whatever. He puts his phone away and goes outside. I immediately call my manager and tell her, "Hey, just wanted to let you know I'm gonna call the police and evict this guy." She tells me to calm down and to give him a verbal warning and one more chance, but she does tell me that if he takes a handicapped spot, to have his car towed right away. Love her for that. So this total jerk comes back in and walks right up to the desk, takes some of my manager's cards, and says to me,
I just want to be clear. You don't give a hoot about your job, right?
I legit don't remember what I said other than, "You need to go back to your room or I'm gonna have you removed." His response was,
Okay, well, I'm about to call the hotel brand and get you fired. I'll be talking to your manager in the morning. You're about to lose your job.
LMAO. What an idiot. My manager obviously told me I didn't have anything to worry about. She told me if he came to the desk again to go ahead and call the police. The only thing that really got to me was when he put his phone in my face and leaned across the desk. If he wouldn't have done that, the thought of evicting him probably wouldn't have even crossed my mind, but he really tried it. On my way out at the end of the shift, you better believe I checked every single handicap spot for a car with no decal. Of course, his scared self didn't have the actual nerve to park in one. You need me to start at 8:30? Okay then. Setting the stage. I was working in a small tech startup ages ago when I was just fresh out of uni as a grad first, then as a software engineer. At first, the company was fantastic. I was in the R&D department and we were making some cool cutting-edge stuff. Then the company ran into trouble and had a shakeup. They fired everyone in R&D except for the lowest paid worker, aka me. They then brought on a new GM who was not a tech guy. At this point, our product worked pretty well, but the sales guys would promise the world, whilst we could only maybe provide Iceland. The precipitating incident. I used to come in at 9 or 10ish, so not a morning person, and finish at between 7 to 10 p.m. Also, at least 3 to 5 times a month needed to travel to clients and needed to be there for a meeting at 9, so left at 4 a.m. All good, got the work done and everyone was happy. Enter our new GM. GM.
I've noticed you come in late on many occasions in the last few weeks. What is going on?
Me. I've never had a set start time. Just do the work and get things done. I'm not late because I don't have an official start time. GM.
That's bonkers. You're contracted for 8:30 to 5. I need you to be in at 8:30.
Me. Sure, will do. Maliciously compliant. Come in at 8:30 every day, left at 5. Result. Got a lot less work done. Customers had to work around me arriving at midday. Sorry, my manager doesn't allow me to leave before 7:30, so nothing I can do. GM pulled me into his office, saying he had had complaints about me not being available to customers. I told him I don't understand why. He told me to work at 8:30, which I'm doing. He says, well, but customer visits don't count. Well, should have told me that. Then complained my productivity had gone down in the last few months. Well, sure, I'm working my contracted hours as per his instructions, no longer pulling 9 to 12 hours a day. Outcome. He asked me to ignore his instructions and go back to the way we were. Informed him I found a new job. My mom won't help me, but expects me to support her financially on multiple occasions. I, 21 female, am a college student in my senior year. I was lucky enough to get 2 different jobs on campus. Not entirely relevant, but it ties in. I work in the residence halls at my campus for both jobs. One pays me twice a semester as it splits the pay for both my housing and meal plan as the job pays for it. The other I get paid every 2 weeks. Both jobs are laid back. Here's the problem. Whenever I get paid back the money that's left over from books and fees, My mom always expects me to give her some of the money. She even has went as far as to go to my school's website to check the academic calendar to see when school refunds are expected to deposit. The week of deposit, she starts to question me on how much I'm getting back and how much I'm going to give her. I'll tell her that I'm getting enough back, as I don't want her to know how much because she wants half of what I get. Specifically, I remember I gave her $700 of my refund because she found out how much I was getting back. At the time, it was my birthday, and I was unhappy about this because I wanted to use the money for myself. Somehow, she blew the money up in a few days and claimed she paid bills with it. Then proceeded to tell me that I'll have to pay for her meals as well as her fiancé's, not my dad, because they didn't have the money. I asked her what happened to the money I gave her, and she proceeded to guilt trip me, and by saying you're supposed to help family, and I gave birth to you and rocked you to sleep all those nights and I was tired, basically giving me the whole "you should help me because I gave you life" speech. She even tried to ask me for money to buy her fiancé a Valentine's Day gift. Fast forward to now, and I'm in a bind with money, and she tells me not to ask her for money, and she's not going to ask me for any. Not to sound bratty, but I felt it was unfair, especially since I have no choice but to give her my money and she never pays me back, but she expects me to pay her back. I'll just wait to go back to college at the end of July, because I know I won't have to struggle because I'll have both of my jobs. Don't give her the money. Tell her you need it and can't afford to give her any. OP. I've tried that too. She'll just start talking about me to everyone in the family that'll listen. Then they'll be upset with me until I tell them what's going on. Why do you care what other people think about you? It's none of their business. You can't control how others perceive you. OP. I know, I need to be firmer, but sometimes she makes life uncomfortable. I end up folding and giving in so she'll leave me alone. I know it's not healthy, but I'm working on it. You do have a choice about giving her money. Don't do it. Does she pay for your tuition or housing? If you pay for all of it, you don't owe her anything. You didn't ask to be born. Her taking care of you as an infant was her responsibility. Her bills, her responsibility. OP. She doesn't pay for my schooling, and the last time I didn't give her any money and I put my foot down, I was 18, and she didn't talk to me for 3 days. I had called sick with a bad ear infection, and she didn't even want to see if I was okay. She went as far as to talk about me in front of me to people about me not giving her money and didn't want me to say anything in return. Then I broke down when my aunt sent me a screenshot of the ugly things my mom said about me because I wouldn't give her any money. Then when I finally gave her the money, because I couldn't take it anymore of her acting like I wasn't there, she started talking to me again. Please cut contact with this monster. The entitlement of this woman is astounding. I went no contact with my parents after years of this kind of treatment and never looked back. Like, how hard is it to be a decent parent? For me, the final straw was when my dad refused to pay for my college just because I chose to major in literature. So now, thanks to my dad, I'm neck deep in student loans and I have a degree that's pretty much useless, so I can't even find a decent job. If that's not bad enough, I might be pregnant again, which won't end well for me like it did the previous times. Thanks, America. Am I the jerk for telling people in my school about my dad's affair with his wife? I, 16 male, live with my dad, his wife, and the kids they had together, who are 12 and 9. I actually had very little contact with my dad until 2 years ago when my mom got sick and ended up in the hospital. She passed 3 months after going into the hospital. Then I got stuck with his happy little family. My parents were married when my dad met his wife. She worked with him and they started an affair. The affair only came to light when she got pregnant. I found out about it through my aunt and uncle. I stayed with my mom. Dad sometimes saw me. I've never been afraid to be honest about why I don't like living with my family. I've talked about it in school since I moved in with them, in their small little town. Word has gotten out, and my dad's wife found out how people will judge. She was grocery shopping, and a friend of hers told her to stay away from her husband. Things got out from there. They also found out I mentioned how my parents' marriage only ended because my dad got his wife pregnant during the affair. Their kids never knew about this and found out via mean kids at school. They ended up confronting me over it, and I told them they were coming to the wrong person if they wanted an apology, because I don't give a hoot about their feelings or them being embarrassed. Dad told me I had a bad attitude. I told him he shouldn't expect me to celebrate their affair or their relationship. She then told me if my mom was a good wife and mother, my dad never would have strayed in the first place, and that I had the chance to have a family and was punishing them when it wasn't my place. I told her if she ever said anything negative about my mom again, then she would be happy to settle for embarrassment, because I would make sure everyone knew just how terrible she is to speak crap of her stepson's past mom when she had got with his father behind his mom's back and helped in the breakdown of his family. They still insist I should not be telling people about their personal business and making their lives harder by spreading gossip. Am I the jerk? Your dad doesn't get to have an affair without it affecting his kids and their mother. You can't cheat in a vacuum. Therefore, it is not private since his choices affect people who depend on him. This is a textbook example of play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Huge, not the jerk. You are grieving right now. I'm sorry your mom is gone, bro. Life will get better, but it takes time. Not the jerk. Bottom line, if you're embarrassed to tell the world what you're doing, then you probably shouldn't do it. They're embarrassed over their own actions. If it was such a great thing, why are they so ashamed to tell people? Because they know they're wrong. They're awful people, and I wouldn't care about their feelings either. People on here are being nice to you because you're young, but let's be honest here. What was the purpose of you telling people at school your family business? Everyone sucks here. They're right. You shouldn't be spreading gossip, and you're doing it out of anger, which I get, but people will use this info against you and your family. And they are crappy for what they did, and how the stepmom speaks to you is atrocious, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a point. Everyone sucks here. You're a jerk for indirectly causing issues for your half-siblings who are innocent in all of this. Your stepmom is a giant jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. This table must be hard to serve. VIP foretop in my section. The owner's dad, who actually owns a ton of reputable and lucrative restaurants. He figuratively signs my paychecks and probably my future paychecks too. I'm new at this place, and the manager looks reluctant to give me the table. But it's a specific table and it's in my section, so manager and servers give me the lowdown. Very specific table, very specific wine and services, very specific special requests. You'll be fine, they all say through tight smiles before disappearing to watch the show from afar. I'd been serving for about a year, but not at this level, and never a VIP. But the one thing I did know was that being nervous would mess me up, somehow, somewhere, so I stayed calm and did my best. They were dry, as in didn't speak to me much, but that was fine too because they were so specific with wine and service timing that it left little to talk about. I was dropping the appetizer when the dad boss man looked at me and said, "This table must be hard to serve." I wasn't sure how to respond because it was so candid and warm, but I wanted to keep it professional. So with absolute honey in my tone, I said, "Oh, of course it's important to me that everything is perfect for you, but I wouldn't say you're difficult. I trust my training, and I'm confident I can provide you with an exceptional experience." As I was speaking, I could see the twinkle emerging in his eye and the tiniest smile on his lips. His guests looked similarly amused. His response, "Oh, I meant the table itself, wedged into a corner like this. I don't know how you guys reach into this corner." He became one of my very favorite guests at that moment, despite how embarrassed I was. He requested me whenever he came in, and we never spoke of that awkward time I insinuated that he was a difficult guest when he was just criticizing his son's furnishings. We don't pay you to be 2 minutes late. I've worked at many retail chains, but have had many terrible bosses. Here's one story I think I can give up without any repercussions. At a small, specific retail store, 5 to 6 years ago at this point, I was confronted by my old boss on a specific event that I was late by 2 minutes. Previous day, he had asked me to come in on my day off. I'm at an earlier time than I normally do. I agreed to come in on my day off and work a shift I'm not normally used to, but it's retail. It cannot be that difficult. My old boss asked me to work 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and I showed up at 7:02 a.m., which in my state, there is a 5-minute window for everyone. And this was 100% not a habit of mine at all. I'm normally one to show up 5 minutes early every day and wait aside the time clock. I clocked on and walked to my department with a drink I had already purchased the previous day. As I walked into the department, the manager greeted me, then said,
"When I schedule you at 7 a.m., I expect you to be in department by 7 a.m., not a minute later. We can't pay you to clock in, buy something, and then start working. Over the course of a year, that adds up to hundreds of dollars of lost labor for one individual."
I told my old boss that my drink was from the previous day and that I just clocked in 2 minutes late. My old boss replied with,
"That's not my problem. You need to plan better. You were scheduled at 7, and we are losing cost of labor each minute you are not here. Be in department at scheduled time."
which is not true. I spoke regularly with a payroll employee, and she explained to me quite some time prior that the company does not pay you 3 minutes before or after your scheduled time. So if you clock on at 7 a.m., you are not getting paid until 7:03 a.m. If you clock on at 6:57 a.m., you are not getting paid until 7 a.m. Same for when you return from lunch. However, if you clock on at 7:04, after that 3-minute window, you begin getting paid immediately that minute. My boss was right. I need to plan better. I asked for a printout of my timestamps going back as far as they had record of, and I tallied up each day that I had arrived 3 minutes early and did not get paid for it. I counted well over 330 minutes within a 3-month span that I was not getting paid for, which ended up being a little over $110. I gave my old boss a copy and said, "You can pay me for these dates where I was in department on the dot without getting paid for it." My old boss then replied,
"That's not how our company policy works."
He then went into detail to explain to me exactly what I had already known and gave him a copy of. Yet my old boss is now recognizing that he's contradicted himself and willingly lied to me. When everything clicked in his head that he's contradicting himself, it was far too obvious because his face went bright red and he started smiling, in my opinion, like he had been caught. My old boss:
"Well, you know the policy. We can't pay you for that."
Me: "Then I will begin my shift when I am getting paid, not the minute you schedule me. It's not like you're losing labor if you're not even paying the employees that window of time. Schedule me at 7 if you like, but I will not be clocking in until 4 minutes after the scheduled time, as you will not be losing any cost of labor for it, and I will not be losing pay over your personal policy." For about 3 weeks, I clocked in 4 minutes late every day, no matter how early I arrived. I eventually got a warning from the building's HR that it's riding the line and very close to getting a write-up and down the discipline road. I explained to her the entire story, as she seemingly did not like the manager of mine either. She laughed pretty hard at the whole thing and offered me a department transfer with a higher pay. She reminded me that my behavior was listed under a category that could get me terminated and thought the transfer would be a fresh start. Instead, I put in my 2 weeks notice and thanked her for the wonderful opportunity. The funniest part of all of this, years later I saw my old manager working at a new chain in a similar position to what he was doing when I worked for him. He smiled and waved. I smiled and waved and continued on. As time went on, I also bumped into the old HR manager who was working in an entirely different field. I asked her why my old boss left that company. She laughed and said, "He didn't leave. We fired him for time theft." Apparently, my old boss would take a lunch, leave the building, and never clock out for it. My stepsister demands I share my college fund with her. Dad has me, 18 male, and his wife has Ellie, who's 17, but she will be 18 in a week. Dad married his wife when I was 10, but they met and moved in together when I was 9. My mom passed when I was a baby. I was her only kid. My grandma, aka Mom's mom, passed recently, and I found out that she left a sizable amount of money for me. My aunt was the one who mentioned it. She told me Grandma had wanted me to be okay since I had lost Mom so young and all that. The money is enough that I could pay for many years of college and have no debt out of it, but I decided to go for a community college near my aunt and cousins. My stepsister is also starting college and she doesn't have much money going into it. Ellie's mom said that I should split the money in half and give Ellie one half so she can have a good start in life. She said my grandma should have considered her anyway, seeing that Ellie and I grew up together and became brother and sister at a very young age. I said Ellie didn't have anything to do with my grandma, and why would she have her inherit over her other daughter and grandkids? Dad asked me if I would be open to sharing any of my money with Ellie, if I would be open to help her at all. I said no. Ellie flipped and told me I'm supposed to be her big brother and to stop any favoritism. I told her it can't be favoritism when she's not related to that part of my family. Ellie and her mom are saying I'm wrong. Dad hasn't, but he said it would be a good family move to share and to think of Ellie and how she's the only sibling I'll ever have. He knows I don't consider her my sister, so he doesn't push it as much, but he did bring it up. Ellie and her mom have not let up at all in the last several weeks. I moved in with my aunt to get away from the whole thing, but it keeps coming back and it's making me doubt everything. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your grandmother left it to you. Your dad and stepmom should have been setting aside money for you both, but apparently they didn't. Keep your money, spend it wisely on your schooling, and move forward. And make sure your dad does not have any access to the money or to your bank accounts. Not the jerk. Ask what Ellie's relatives are leaving you in their wills. Give her the exact same amount of money. Hint, it's going to be nothing. Not the jerk. Your stepsister isn't entitled to the money, and your maternal grandmother obviously didn't consider her a granddaughter either. Otherwise, she would have left her something. If I were you, I would tell your father to make this clear to his wife and stepdaughter and not to interact with them until they understand that they are not entitled to your money and that it's unfair to keep confronting you about it. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you share the inheritance with your stepsister or not? Please let us know. When will people stop trying to take money that has nothing to do with them? 7 p.m. meeting for parent convenience? You got it. As a school principal, one of my responsibilities is to solicit parents to join the Parent Advisory Council. In fact, it's written into law with specific regulations as to composition, frequency of meetings, etc. One of the requirements is that the meetings have to be held at a time convenient for parents. A decade or so ago, I was principal of a small rural high school that was in a town that served as the hub for a larger area. Most parents of the school worked in town but lived out in the countryside, some as much as an hour away. Because of this, the only way to get parents to attend meetings was to hold them right after school at 4 p.m. Parents were either done working themselves or could make arrangements to dip out a little early, attend the meeting, and get home at a decent time. Particularly in winter, this was important as it was pretty dark and snowy on the rural roads. Partway through the school year, the district hired a new superintendent who had oversight of the high schools. She had come from a large urban school district and didn't fully understand or appreciate how a rural school district worked. At our first meeting with all the principals, she asked each of us for a summary report of school operations, including parent meetings. I dutifully submitted mine as requested and forgot about it. A few weeks later, I got a call from superintendent. We chatted, got to know each other a little bit, and then got down to the reason for the call. I see from your report that you hold your parent meetings at 4 p.m., she said. Yeah, it's the best time so that everyone gets home at a decent hour, I said. A lot of people up here have really long drives, myself included. She took this to mean I had scheduled the meetings around my personal convenience. Well, when I was a principal, I always held them at night so more parents could attend. I think you need to start holding your meetings later. Well, I don't think parents will attend. No. The meetings have to be open to all parents and held at a time convenient to them, she insisted. I think you should start at 7 p.m. to make sure all parents have the opportunity to come. Now, in a big city school, this works fine as most families live within a short drive, but the boss is the boss. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, no problem. Say, why don't you attend the next one to introduce yourself to the parents? I offered. She immediately agreed, and I sent a calendar invitation for a month hence at 7 p.m. My school was located about a 90-minute drive north of the administrative offices where the superintendent worked, and she herself lived about an hour's drive south of it. She was in for a long day. The day of the meeting rolled around, and the superintendent arrived at the school around 6:45 p.m. in anticipation of the meeting. She brought donuts and cookies, and I supplied coffee and water. I had set up the library with a big conference table and seating for 30. No one showed. I suppressed the urge to say, I told you so. Summer and the office dress code. Summer is here, and temperatures are approaching 85 degrees Fahrenheit on the hotter days. I'm located in Northern Europe, which means that this crap is hot for us. And to top it off, the humidity is off the charts. Leave a cold beverage out on the table for a minute or two, and it's condensing as hard as I'm sweating. Puddles underneath and all. We don't have air conditioning at my office, and probably never will. When the weather gets like this, the office turns into a steam sauna, or at least a close approximation, and there's nothing that we can do about it. We survive it the best we can by wearing less clothes. At normal temperature, we wear the typical professional garb, but when the temperature rises, it's typically light dresses and skirts for the women and shorts for men. The unspoken rule was to just keep the designs professional. No Bermuda shorts, bikinis, or clothes with eye-searing colors. You know, normal common sense. However, this year shorts are suddenly a problem. If you've never experienced the glory of arbitrary rule changes before, then I envy you. With that bit of context, summer legs will get on with the malicious compliance. What happened is we got a new manager during the start of the year, and apparently this new manager has new manager ideas. Without warning, a couple of days into steam sauna at work season, the new manager decided that shorts were unprofessional, and in short order, he ordered the men in the office to go back to wearing heat-stroke-inducing long pants. No meetings, no talking with the people in the office first, no different alternative. Just, here are your new guidelines. Have a nice day, kind of situation. Sent out over mail, of course, shortly before the end of the day. The new rule was to take effect immediately. Now, I was none too pleased by this, and come next day, I find out that neither were the rest of the men in the office. Mostly because each and every man went from being uncomfortably hot to now sporting his own little steam oven. Grumbles were had all around. It should be said that when I think something is unfair, I can get a bit confrontational, and I won't take "just because" as a good enough explanation. Basically, I don't play nice with arbitrary rules. As such, during the first day after the rule change, I found a moment to press the new manager for the real explanation. As such things have a tendency to do, after a bit of back and forth, I was finally presented with his reasons. Shorts are unprofessional because no one wants to look at hairy man legs. I honestly didn't know what to say at first, because how do you argue against stupid? Stupefied was the most fitting way to describe my state of mind after that. As I went on with the rest of the day, I tried to figure out how to get this insane rule changed, because I sure as heck was not going to suffer more than necessary during the whole of summer. I went to my buddy to get his take on it, and to no surprise, he agreed with my take. The new manager was just power tripping, or similarly changing rules for no good reason. Now the question became how to get under his skin and pull him down a peg or two. If you've never dealt with this type of person the new manager is, then I can tell you that showing disrespect to their authority is the best way to get under their skin, and pointing out their stupidity publicly is the easiest way to enact change. Of course, with the additional added benefit of painting a target on your own back. After a good half an hour, my buddy had helped me cobble a plan together, and off I went to set it into motion. First, I got confirmation on the reason for no shorts. Basically had new manager confirm over mail that shorts were not allowed and unprofessional because of hairy man legs. Then that evening, I set to it at home, getting ready for wearing shorts to work the next day. When the next day came around, I walked into the office wearing shorts. In no time at all, the new manager was on my case, and in typical new manager style, he gave me a dress down in front of my coworkers. While he did this, I was fighting to not let a grin surface on my face. I think that humans are amazing in many different ways, one of which is that we don't always pay all that much attention to the details of mundane things, and as such can gloss over them with ease. But once your attention has been drawn to something, you basically can't ignore it or unsee it. After new manager was done stroking his ego, I broke. I could not hold in my smile any longer. With the biggest grin on my face, I pointed to my legs and said, "But I shaved my legs." I think that broke the new manager for a full 10 seconds. He just kind of stood there, taking it all in, really looking at my legs, then looking back and forth at them and my face a couple of times. You could see him trying really hard to make sense of what happened while my coworkers snickered in the gallery. After he kinda got his bearing again, I pointed out that the problem with shorts were hairy man legs, and as long as they were no longer hairy, shorts should be no problem. I wish I could tell you that it devolved into an epic meltdown, that new manager was such a jerk that he was immune to reason and would ignore his own previous statement about professional wearing shorts, that the power battle in the office devolved into a battle for who would get the other fired. That didn't happen. Instead, after a short while, still surrounded by the majority of the office staff, the new manager declared that men could go back to how it used to be. I haven't suffered any retaliation as of yet, and it seems that that's not going to happen, which is good. It's also the gift that keeps on giving because I keep seeing new manager's eyes darting down to my manly shaved legs every now and again when I interact with him. I find it absolutely hilarious, and I'm honestly considering keeping them shaved until it stops demanding his attention. I've acquired a new nickname in the office, which I guess is all in good fun. Many of my coworkers have taken it upon themselves to call me by Summer Legs. Am I the jerk for telling my wife it's her fault she didn't have fun in our wedding? I met my wife almost 2 years ago through some common friends. When I met her, she was heavily pregnant with her ex-boyfriend's kid, but her ex wanted nothing to do with her or the kid and dumped her. We got together a bit after she gave birth, and I loved her baby like my own. The kid has just turned 2. Later on, she got pregnant with our kid and gave birth 6 months ago. I had proposed to her during the pregnancy and started planning the wedding straight away. While planning the wedding, I made it clear how I'd like a kid-free wedding, but my wife was against it because she loves the vibes kids bring to weddings. She's also from the Balkans, so having kids at weddings is very important to her because weddings are usually family-oriented in her culture. We eventually came to a compromise and only allowed kids over the age of 10 to attend. She wanted to bring our kids as well, but I told her I'm against that because who's going to take care of them? She said our parents will help us out, and I told her I'm not going to ask my parents to babysit instead of having fun at my wedding. She said I'm being really unfair, not trying to find a solution with her, and how important it is for her to include our kids in the wedding. I told her she's the one who wants them there, so it's on her to find a solution. Her parents had said they'd help her out with the kids, but they ended up enjoying themselves during our wedding last weekend. My wife barely danced and got up at all because she was caring for the kids and running around them the entire time. She complained how everyone else enjoyed her wedding, but her as a bride didn't even get to dance more than twice. I told her it's her fault and she shouldn't bring the kids in the first place, especially the 2-year-old, because she was the one causing the most trouble during the wedding, running around the whole time. My parents also scolded her and told her that she's very entitled for expecting them to babysit the kids while they were having fun at their only son's wedding. My wife said we are all the jerks for not trying to see her point of view and how we all cared more about our own fun and comfort, and we tossed the bride to the side, and she feels nobody gave a hoot about her the entire time. Am I the jerk? Edit. A small disclaimer since people are asking. I'd only agree to hire a babysitter if my wife decided to leave the kids at home. I didn't want a babysitter at the wedding. The reason is that I didn't want a stranger at my wedding. My wife knew I wouldn't agree on a babysitter to attend the wedding so that they can watch the kids. She didn't find out last minute. She could communicate better with her friends and family to help her out if having the kids there were that important to her, and she also wanted to enjoy herself. Who was supposed to watch the kids if they hadn't attended the wedding? Couldn't you have arranged for that babysitter to watch the kids at the wedding? Why couldn't you have proposed a real compromise? You knew your solution wasn't going to be good enough. Your wife is right. You didn't care about her feelings. Did you propose because she got pregnant? Nothing you wrote actually implies to me you care about her in a meaningful way. You're the jerk. You didn't want a stranger at your wedding? You personally knew all of the staff there. I think you implemented this rule to make sure she didn't enjoy herself. And when the people who were taking care of your kids failed to do so, you just sat back and enjoyed yourself because you thought, serves her right. They're your kids too. Step up and be a parent. You, in several comments, revel in the fact that your wife had a bad time as punishment. That's messed up. You don't see her as equal. Her punishment was for not doing what you wanted in the exact manner you wanted it. You should not be trying to punish her. You said your parents don't see the 2-year-old as equal and you're cool with that. That's also messed up. That 2-year-old is going to need so much therapy for that. As someone who went through that, take it from me. If you allow your parents to think like this, your kids will see it and it will be a reflection of your thoughts too. Anyway, seriously, go seek therapy if you think it's natural to enjoy your spouse's sadness. That's textbook personality disorder. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for ignoring my boss and blocking his number on my vacation? My boyfriend, 29 male, and I, 26 female, are currently long distance. We take turns visiting each other. He came to see me after almost 2 months of not seeing each other, and we were finally ready to make plans. I requested to have 5 days off, which was approved with my job. I've worked there for 6 years now. It was after my shift, and I was heading out quickly. I had to pick up my boyfriend from the airport. I clocked out, and while I was saying bye, my new boss of 2 weeks stopped me, and he asked me if I could cover a shift. Since one of my coworkers had called in sick, we were short-staffed, and he needs me to stay for a couple hours more. I had a 10-hour shift. I was exhausted. I responded, "No, I'm sorry, but I'm unable to, and I can't stay late. I have covered it before, and I don't mind, but I had somewhere to be." I mentioned I was picking up someone at the airport. He told me they could take an Uber. My boyfriend wouldn't be happy with me if I did that to him. Also, he has no key to my apartment. No one else wanted to stay, and I was the third person he asked that had to say no. I said I was sorry. I just can't tonight. Another time. He called me a lousy worker and said I'm not a team player. I said, I guess I'm not a team player, and I walked past him. I called out that I'd see him in 5 days. While driving to the airport, I kept getting calls and texts from him. It got so bad that I had to pull over to turn off my phone. My boss wanted me to come back to work. I had to turn on my phone so my boyfriend could contact me. My phone was flooded with text messages, ding after ding. I think I got close up to 15 texts. I blocked his number. I was so happy to see my boyfriend, but I was getting emails from my boss constantly when I was supposed to be on my time off. I didn't respond to them. 1, he was asking me stuff that I didn't know the answer to. 2nd, even if I did, I'm not telling him. I don't know, I was starting to get petty. I still had fun with my boyfriend. When I went to work, my boss called me into his office. He blew up on me for being unprofessional, and he's still new to his job. I should have helped out or at least replied to his emails. If I responded to other people, I could have helped him. It's not my responsibility when it's my vacation time. I got my first write-up ever. Is there something I'm missing? Did I do something inherently wrong here? I'm actually considering reporting him. He's still new to his job. Am I the jerk? Edit. I'm Canadian. I live in BC. Update. I just sent an email to my HR with all the emails and call logs, and any other evidence I have. My job isn't like on-call, so I don't understand why he was bothering me. He's my age roughly. On a happier note, my boyfriend and I are planning to move in together soon. Not the jerk. Report that behavior, and I hope you kept the texts, emails, and call logs as proof. Many companies are very strict that you do not work off the clock. Even if it were paid time off, you didn't specify, but I wanted you to know it's even in that case. That behavior was harassment, and you should not have been retaliated against with a write-up. Not the jerk. What he did is unethical. He is a lousy boss with incredibly poor boundaries. Get yourself straight to HR and report him for harassing you on your vacation time. I would also formally request that time off be reallocated to you, as you had to spend it worrying about your boss's reaction. In the US, what he did would be a violation of labor law, because he wrote you up for essentially taking your earned vacation. That would be considered workplace retaliation. You really do need to report him. I guarantee you're not the only one he's doing this to, and it will only get worse. Am I the jerk for wearing the same color as the bride as a wedding harpist and not changing? So I, female 18, was asked to play the harp at a friend of my father's wedding. Normally, I would ask for payment beforehand, but since it was for a family friend, they asked if they could just pay me at the reception, and I told them yes. The dates worked out for me, and it was set in a church about 1 hour from my house. I showed the dress I planned to wear to the bride when we went over the music she wanted and at the rehearsal, but only on a hanger. It looks like it would be ugly on a hanger, as it's just navy blue with long sleeves and floor length, but it's surprisingly pretty. I got to the venue about 4 hours early, so my harp would have time to acclimate to the room. When I got there, the bride's mother came to give me my corsage, and when she saw me, she demanded I change my dress. I laughed because I've known her for years, and then realized she wasn't joking. I asked what was wrong with it, and she said that the bride went with a non-traditional dress that was also navy blue. I panicked a little because this is her wedding, and I felt really bad, but she and her groom had approved it twice. I told the mother, and she asked if I had any other color I could change into. I don't bring extra dresses unless my dress somehow doesn't get approved beforehand, so I didn't. She then told me to go to the bridal shop 20 minutes away and buy a new dress. I refused because those dresses would cost about what I was getting paid for this wedding, and I told her I couldn't afford it. I felt bad, but she begrudgingly walked away. The actual wedding went smoothly, and after everyone else had left the church and congratulated the bride, I stopped to talk to her. I explained what her mother-in-law said, and she said that it was fine and that they weren't thinking when they approved my dress. At the reception, when I talked to her mother-in-law about payment, she refused to pay me. I didn't want to cause a scene, but the bride came over and heard us talking. This time, she was also upset with me and also refused to pay me. I didn't know what to do. As my parents were busy and couldn't attend this wedding, I didn't have anyone there to back me up. A lot of people assume harpists come from a lot of money because of how expensive harps are, but I've been renting a harp since 4th grade, and when my teacher passed, we bought it for an amazing deal. I also charge a lot less than most musicians would, but I have a college payment due in a few days and I can't afford it. I got my parents involved when I got home, and my dad talked to his friend, the father of the groom, who was there when they approved the dress, and he got the payment to me. I still feel really bad, but I don't think there was anything I could have done. Should I have just gone ahead and bought a new dress? Am I the jerk? Girl, no. They just wanted to stiff you. You did everything you were supposed to. In the future, invoice clients and keep electronic records in case things escalate in ways you cannot mitigate via fatherly intervention. Yes, as a professional musician, I advise you to always get a signed contract that specifies a deposit to be made at the time of signing, usually 50%, and specifies the remaining balance is paid at the beginning of the event, not after, even for friends and family. Not the jerk. You had it approved twice and the bride was okay with it. Glad your parents backed you and you got paid. Am I the jerk for forcing my boyfriend to eat spicy and gross food? I, 23 female, decided to introduce my boyfriend, 26 male, to my parents over dinner. My boyfriend is by no means a picky eater. He's eaten snails, intestines, chicken feet, etc. previously. He also has a spice tolerance that rivals mine. He can eat 3 times buldak without breaking a sweat and even eats ghost pepper noodles for fun. I tell my mom she doesn't have to make it less spicier for my boyfriend, or less westernized, which means no animal organs, no animal brains, no eyes, less spices, more palatable to a picky eater basically. We all start eating, except for my boyfriend, who's picking at his food. My mom serves him the best pieces of fish and chicken. Instead of eating it, he just picks off the flesh from the bones, discards the bones, and pats the oil off of the fish. I don't get why he's just playing with the food, because my dad is obviously getting a bit ticked off when my boyfriend hasn't taken a single bite of the food except for the rice, 10 minutes into the meal. I picked up the chicken from his plate and fed it to him. He made a gagging sound. Over Malabari chicken stew. He's getting on my last nerve by now, so I whisper in his ear that he has to start eating the food or else he's sleeping on the couch tonight. He finally starts eating, obviously unwilling, but he's still eating nonetheless. He tries out everything, gags a couple of times, leaves a lot on his plate still, and then announces he's done with the meal. I tell my parents that he has gastric issues, but we didn't want to upset them by not coming today. They nodded, fairly sure they knew it was just an excuse, but they didn't press the issue and just told my boyfriend to have a good night. We took the cue and left, and almost immediately got into an argument in the car. I asked him what he was doing after my mom made such a great meal for him. He asked me why I forced him to eat all that gross and overtly spicy food. He asked me if I was trying to hurt him. I was taken aback. He told me it doesn't matter what he normally eats. I forced him to eat things against his will on the pretense of manners, and that I needed to change that. I don't know if I should apologize to him because I don't know who's in the wrong here. Am I the jerk? Edit. In response to people asking for more context, when I met his parents, I tried out foods that I would normally not be okay with, including snails. I'm not a fan of escargot, and I hate the texture of it. I don't like eating rabbit, frogs, etc., but I still ate it, and complimented his mom's cooking because I knew it was important to gain their approval. He even coached me on ways to eat the food and lectured me on my manners during dinners with his family. If I refused servings of food I thought I couldn't handle, he would observe his parents' expressions to see if they weren't pleased. If they weren't, he would lightly tap me on my back or tap on my hand. I would eat the food if he did that. I expected the same or similar manners from him. This is also part of the reason why I got so mad. I tried my best to appeal to his parents and even tried out strange foods to me, but he didn't take a single bite of any of the dishes and instead played around with it. I would get it if he tried the dishes and decided he didn't like it, but he didn't even touch the food. At the end, he tried small bites of each side dish, which is all I asked for in the first place. This was my boyfriend's first meeting with my parents. It was important to make a good impression on them in case our relationship gets more serious, but instead, he was acting like a kid the whole time. Edit. I asked my boyfriend why he was gagging and if he was feeling discomfort because of the food or because of the situation. He told me that he was afraid of how unhygienic the food was. Asked him why he thought it was unhygienic. He won't give me a straight answer and is just deflecting. I asked him if it was because my parents were South Indian and not North Indian. He didn't say yes or no. He just yelled at me and asked me how dare I try to paint him like that. I don't care at this point. I've mentally turned myself off. Thank you to all the commenters who have shared your insight, and I understand it was inappropriate for me to force feed him. I see that I'm partly the jerk here. I will not be arguing or responding to any more comments unless they are info queries. I was going with you're the jerk, but after the edit, not the jerk. Please talk to him or reconsider your relationship. He wants you to bend over backwards for his family, but won't do the same for you. Please seriously reconsider your relationship. Not the jerk. What does he mean by unhygienic? In your edit, you mentioned that he coached you on manners, etc., and observed his parents when you have turned down foods unfamiliar to you. He does the same to your parents and it's okay? I mean, seriously? If I were you, I would be rethinking this relationship. Too dirty for the bin. I used to work for a place on a printing press. This place ran mostly UV inks. For those not in the know, that doesn't mean they do trippy things under a black light. It means that unless exposed to a proper amount of UV light, they stay wet forever. Don't ask how. It's a mixture of polymers, photoinhibitors, light receptors, and pigment. If you touch non-cured ink, you'll get it on you. Doesn't matter if it's 2 minutes old or 2 years old. We printed using a rubbery material wrapped in an aluminum cylinder. UV ink is semi-caustic, so it will slowly eat away at rubber materials like printing plates. Plates are expensive, so reusing them is nice, but using partially eroded plates for fine detail is bad for business, so several plates got thrown out after just one use. Onto the meat of things. I was an operator running a printing press, flexographic narrow web to be exact, and I was the only operator in this press during my shift. After working there for a few months, I received a complaint from my supervisor that the person who cleans and/or throws away the plates is complaining that I'm sending her dirty plates. Of course, I respond, "Yeah, that's sort of the idea." Supervisor, "Can you wash them better before sending them back?" Me, "Our plates either get put through a plate cleaning machine or thrown away. Are my plates too dirty to be washed or too dirty to be thrown away?" Supervisor, "Please just take the time to wash them so she doesn't complain." Me, "Just to verify, I make more than her, and the press, while I'm running it, makes over 50 times what I make. If I'm cleaning plates, it's taking away from the time that I'm making money for the company. Why can't you just tell her to wear gloves?" Supervisor, "Wash the plates." He walks away. So from that point on, I made sure to get the plates extra clean before they were to be cleaned again or thrown away. Cost the company an average of 90 minutes of non-production time per workday. I think my press was quoted at about $1,700 per hour at the time. My wife tricks me into thinking she's pregnant. My wife, female 26, and I, male 30, decided to start having kids. We've been trying for over 9 months and nothing happened. We were told to be patient, but I couldn't help but keep stressing out about a problem that's preventing us from conceiving. The issue is that my wife kept joking about this matter and pranked me twice by lying to me, saying that she was pregnant. The first was when I was at work, and she sent a text telling me that she was pregnant. I was so happy. I came home and brought stuff with me to celebrate, only to find her laughing in my face, saying it was a prank. Second time was when she told me she was pregnant and was recording my reaction during and after the prank. Again, laughing, telling me it was a prank, but this time she shared the video with her family. I told her I didn't appreciate how she laughs about a serious matter, then having me believe it was true only to ruin my happiness. She stopped for 2 months. Last night we were at my parents' house sitting having dinner when she said she had a gift for me. She had my sister go bring a small teddy bear with a note on it and gave it to me. I was nervous and worried about her pulling some of her pranks on me in front of my family. I read the note that the teddy bear had, and it said that I was going to be a daddy. I looked at my wife, and she smiled at me and congratulated me, saying she was pregnant. I saw red completely. I said, "That's it." I got up from my seat and tossed the piece of paper on the table and just snapped, telling her to stop making fun of something so serious and sensitive. I told her I was done with her lack of respect and sympathy for the most important thing that I've been struggling with, and to include my parents in her prank too was low. My wife excused herself to the bathroom. My mom and dad were unaware of what was happening. They literally paused and asked what the heck was wrong with me. My sister said my wife was actually pregnant and just confirmed by tests that she's seen with her own eyes. I felt both happy and devastated because I thought she was pulling the same prank again, and I got fed up with it. My wife was mad and argued with me in the car, saying that I ruined her joy and made her look awful in front of my family, as well as lashing out at her as my reaction to the happy news. She said she told me in front of my parents to show me she was serious this time. She had her mom call to berate me and say that her poor daughter will suffer with my boorish behavior and my lack of respect for her. My wife has been giving me the cold shoulder ever since. Am I the jerk? She told me I ruined the moment she's been waiting for so long, and that she'll remember my reaction for the rest of her life. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
This reminds me of the boy who cried wolf. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Random lady thinks my hearing aids are AirPods. Oh my gosh, I have one. Never did think I'd have a story for this sub. Wow, okay, I'm still in a state of rage. So I just got home from good old Mart of Walls. I knew pretty much what I wanted, so I didn't bother with a cart. Of course, I get distracted, and I end up in the kitchen cutlery aisles, and I'm idly looking at things and putting them back on the shelves. I guess that made me look like a worker? I don't know how. I'm wearing a dress, whatever. So I'm hard of hearing. I wear hearing aids. They're rose gold and awesome. Cool tech in my ears. Since I'm shopping, I have no reason to think someone would be needing my attention, but this entitled mom was trying to get my attention. I see this woman and she says,
Finally, I've been chasing you down the aisles.
I'm thinking I must have something loose or I dropped something. That she thought I was a worker just did not occur to me.
You really shouldn't wear those things while you're working.
She's out of breath. Her little toddler's babbling away, oblivious. I'm still clueless. Wear what?
The AirPods.
Fun fact, as someone who is hard of hearing, I mishear things, and it took me forever to understand what she said. I thought she said, their pods. Whose pods?
Your pods.
What pods? I'm looking down at my dress, thinking something had latched onto my dress. As I put my head down, this crazy Karen grabbed my left hearing aid. It's squealing away and protesting, and I'm in such a state of shock. My aids are part of me. I went from baffled to pure rage in a split second. You give that back now! I clawed at my hearing aid, and I wrestled it back from her. I'm trembling at this point. Don't touch me. Entitled mom's kid starts crying from the sudden energy change.
Look what you did. I was just saying you shouldn't wear those while you're working.
I start walking away from her. Get away from me. If you come near me, I'll call the police and have you arrested for assault.
What? Assault? But
I growled at her. Yes, growled. And I walked away to find a store manager to tell them they had a customer who just tried taking one of my hearing aids. But then I left. I was too outraged to get back to my lackadaisical meandering. Quick edit. I did speak to a store manager, but after, instead of getting what I went there for, I left. People need to learn, aside from it being a medical emergency, keep your hands to yourself. Even if you did work there, what she did was still assault. I'm happy that she didn't break your hearing aids doing that. You would have had to sue her because she wouldn't have done the right thing and paid you. Sorry you had to experience that. Charged me an extra month and don't want to return my deposit? The contract of the apartment I've been living in for the past year recently ended. I had, however, forgotten of the 60 days written move-out notice until I was reminded by management 10 days before I turned in my notice. Though it is specified in the contract and it is my responsibility as a tenant to maintain them, I was still livid by the fact that they didn't have the courtesy to remind me all the 3 times they contacted me about renewing my contract and me verbally declining. All 3 times they said they'd taken note of it, and me being the fool that I am, I believed them. Since I did not provide the 60 days notice before moving out in writing, I was forced to pay an extra month of rent that, regardless of my moaning and crying, was not waived. Throughout my panic, they kept reminding me that it was in the contract and that they couldn't do anything. Since I had to pay an extra month, I decided I was going to do everything in my power to get my deposit back, cueing the malicious compliance. I went through the entire contract. The contract specified that I was allowed to be present during the inspection as long as I provided a written notice in advance, no date specified, and that I had the right to any information extracted from the inspection. The contract also specified that the apartment has to be left in the same condition it was received, and that I was responsible for any cleaning fees from services they'd have to use. Before I actually start the juicy part of the story, I have to mention that I took detailed pictures and videos of the apartment when I moved in. Unfortunately, mine was incredibly dirty, even food in the carpets. I requested it to be cleaned, but they never came by and did anything, so I took care of it since I'm terrified of confrontation. But I still saved and recorded everything that was not okay, regardless of how mild it was. The day I read the contract, I emailed them requesting to be present during the inspection and that I wanted a copy of everything obtained from that inspection to compare with my notes. They didn't respond that day, so I took it upon myself to email them every day for the next 4 days until they got back to me with the following reply. Per the rental agreement move-out inspection, you may be present at move-out inspection if you notify us in advance in writing of your request. OP, you turned your keys into the Dropbox on 5/30/22 and never requested a walkthrough. The walkthrough inspection was already completed this morning. So I obviously forwarded all my previous emails asking if those were not considered in writing. Then they offered to redo the inspection with me present, but I was out of town, so I requested all the data they obtained from it instead, to which they agreed. To this day, I have not received anything from the inspection, but I did find out that they didn't actually do it until 3 days after they started. They did on that email via the bill they sent charging me cleaning fees and no deposit back. I was like, okay, since you're not going to send me what I asked for, I'm going to send you what I have. I highlighted the part where they lied to me about the inspection date, attached pictures of how I received the apartment compared to how I left it, very clean, and I made sure to include their timestamps. Advised that per the contract, there is no reason for them to charge me cleaning fees since it was in better condition than received. I also demanded my deposit back and sent them receipts of all products I used to clean the apartment, including a new vacuum, so they could refund me at their earliest convenience or I'd contact corporate directly. I also advised that I'd send them all the communication we had ever had, the lies they told me, and the rest of the video and images I have of the apartment. I honestly have no idea if I would have gotten anywhere contacting corporate, but it doesn't matter because within 3 days I got my deposit back and got refunded for everything I spent on cleaning supplies. I did leave a review in every site I could find, but the Google one got removed for some reason. Am I the jerk for telling my husband to quit waking me up? Without fail, every time my 29 female husband, who's 37, wakes up in the middle of the night, he wakes me fully up to ask me what time it is. Both of us sleep with our cell phones charging next to our beds, so it's just as easy for him to reach out and check the time on his own phone as it is for him to wake me up and ask. My husband says I'm being the jerk because I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I say waking me up for something meaningless that he can do for himself with less effort than he expends asking me shows a complete disregard for me and is really selfish of him. Now, I know you're going to say that I'm making a huge deal out of nothing, but it's not like this is a sometimes thing. He does it often, several times a week, and when he does it, it always takes me forever to fall back to sleep. We both work full-time jobs and have an infant. I do 100% of the nighttime baby duties because my husband commutes further than I do. So he says it just makes sense for me to let him sleep since he has to be out of the door before I do in the mornings. I need to be clear. I'm not complaining if he wakes me up due to the baby needing me. I wake up to his cries. I don't think my husband even hears it. My complaint is strictly that he wakes me up to ask me what time it is. I feel like he's being really selfish. Sometimes I just want to sleep too. Anyway, am I the jerk for complaining and telling my husband to cut it out, or is he being needlessly insensitive to my needs? Not the jerk. What's wrong with your husband? You are completely correct. This is inconsiderate and selfish of him to wake you up to ask you each time, and it's poor parenting and marital behavior to dump all the nighttime parenting on you. Is he this selfish in other aspects of your lives? Not the jerk. But just stop responding and let him think you're asleep, or just tell him to look at the phone. If you keep telling him the time when he wakes you up, even if you've asked him not to, he doesn't have to change his behavior. OP. I have started saying, well, what does your phone say? And then he moves to the couch because of my attitude. Win-win for both of us. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
This dude really wakes you up just to ask you what time it is? Bruh.
You can't read on duty. Worked as a front office staffer, basically a secretary, back in the 10s recession. I was wildly overqualified at the time, but it was a hard job market and I needed to do things like eat and live somewhere. I worked on a staff of 4 other office workers with wildly different work pace styles. One did absolutely nothing except talk to his family on the phone 4 to 5 times a day. One watched ESPN with an earbud in, one managed and cultivated his social media presence for his daughter, and one was never there because she was always getting something from the supply closet or picking up lunch. So basically, I was youngish and naive and wanted to do an excellent job, so I picked up all the slack and did all of the work, and quickly too. I would always answer the phone on the first ring, reorganize the way we sent out calendar meetings, assemble read-aheads and skimmed them so I could give bulleted summaries, and just generally made myself indispensable. Given that I worked hard, was well known as the only competent one, I thought, like some sort of fool, no one would care if I had a book to read under my desk between taking calls, scheduling appointments, or just being a general customer service desk. If no one was talking to me, my job basically was in a holding pattern. Everyone was messing around. I watched the man next to me build a new Acura on the website about 10 times a day. I was wrong. The first time I opened my book, I got snide comments. The second time, one of the guys hustled over to moan at me that I could never ever read on the job, that it made me look lazy. Side-eye sports statistics fantasy league card in full view. I tried to explain that when no one was in the office but us, I thought I could just read quietly, and that if anyone called or came in, I would immediately stop and help them. We didn't have cameras in our office or anything watching us, but that didn't matter. I was chastised.
You should always look busy, even if no one is here to see it.
So I did. I went online, found about 24 free PDF books, mostly classics, and emailed them to myself. I sat there and read through books all day on Adobe Reader and was commended for my intense focus and dedication because no one ever saw me clicking around a website. Well, you did tell me to always look busy. Edited to add the malice. In the end, I basically stopped doing a huge chunk of my job because I was now absorbed in my book. I wouldn't answer the phone right away, wouldn't see emails come in. Basically, got put down into a much less stellar service role, at least when helping them. Always on the money when the boss came around though. Am I the jerk for laughing at/embarrassing my brother-in-law in front of the entire family? Okay, my family and in-laws are pretty split about this whole thing, so Hub suggested this place to see what outsiders thought. Yesterday was my sister's engagement party. She's marrying my husband's cousin, funny enough, and she asked to have the party at our house since we have a huge backyard and she just wanted something simple, like a barbecue. I of course agreed, and the start of the day went well. Everyone from both sides of the family mingled, the grill was going, people congratulated the soon-to-be bride and groom, etc. Well, as everyone was loading their plates up to eat, I noticed my brother-in-law grabbing a plate and paused because I swear he looked different than he did when he showed up. I couldn't pin why at first, but when he sat down at the table, his mom/my mother-in-law asked him if he had trimmed his beard. That's what it was, his beard, which had been sort of bushy when he had arrived earlier, was now trimmed down and neat. That's when he looked at me and said he had hoped I didn't mind, but he used the trimmer we had in the bathroom to freshen himself up. I was confused because my trimmer and my husband's were both in our connected bathroom, which was off-limit to guests. But then it hit me. He'd used the cat trimmer I keep in the downstairs bathroom, the one I used to trim my 4 very fluffy cats' hair and shave off dingleberries to keep them clean. I must have looked just as shocked as I felt because Hubs was asking what was wrong and I ignored him and asked brother-in-law if he had used the small white trimmer that had been in the back of our bottom drawer in the bathroom cabinet. Brother-in-law flushed a little at being outed for going through our cabinets, I guess, and huffed but confirmed, "Yes, that one." And y'all, I lost it. I laughed so hard I thought I might choke. Even typing this out now is hard, cause just remembering it is making me laugh again. Brother-in-law got upset and asked what was so funny, and without thinking I just blurted out what that trimmer is used for. Hub started laughing too, followed by just about everyone on my side of the family and a good chunk of Hub's side too. At some point during the laughter, brother-in-law got up and called us all jerks before storming out. Mother-in-law tried scolding me for saying that in front of everyone. Some of Hub's family agreed, but Hub shushed her and said he shouldn't have gone through our stuff. I feel bad for laughing. I could have pulled a brother-in-law aside to tell him instead of blurting it out in front of everyone. Mother-in-law says I should apologize. Am I the jerk? Some edits for clarification. My soon-to-be brother-in-law that my sister is going to be marrying is my husband's cousin. The brother-in-law who used the shaver is my husband's actual blood brother. They're two totally different men. Sorry for the confusion. 2. No, we're not going to be gifting brother-in-law a shaver. That's funny as a joke, but not to actually do. 3. Brother-in-law did clean up the mess after himself, save for a few bits that got on the floor. 4. And I've decided to call him tomorrow so we can talk. Final edit. Okay everyone, brother-in-law came over today to talk, and I was worried he'd still be upset, but he wasn't. Well, turns out he does have a girlfriend, and when he told her about it, looking for sympathy I think, she instead laughed at him and told him that's the risk of using strange razors without permission first. He apologized for going through our stuff and said he was actually looking for some baby powder. Turns out he was, chafing from the heat. To be honest, it was really hot that day, so understandable, and he was too embarrassed to ask us if we had any. I know everyone said not to, and he deserved it, but I still apologized for laughing at him and blurting what the razor was used for out like that. He said it was fine, and he knows now he kinda had it coming. The best part was, he asked to take a picture with one of my cats, and I agreed, and he posted it to Facebook with the caption, "I've never felt closer to my sister-in-law's cats," which had me and Hubs cracking up. Seems he was just hurt in the moment, but after a day of thinking, he decided to let it go and just roll with what he knows will be a big joke for who knows how long. So that's the update, everyone. Brother-in-law and I are good. Not the jerk at all, but wow, that's funny. Who goes through someone else's bathroom cabinets and decides to groom themselves using a trimmer they find? I honestly expected it to be a trimmer used for personal bits, so the revelation that the trimmer is used for cats was an unexpected turn. I'd buy that guy his own personal trimmer as a birthday or Christmas present, but that might be taking it too far. Not the jerk. There's responses, and then there's reactions. You reacted to a situation/information that you couldn't have prepared yourself a proper response for. This reminds me of when my brother helped himself to a particular body wash of mine when we were both visiting my parents. I burst into laughter because it was Summer's Eve in the labeled branded bottle, and he got mad I told him it all. He's not upset at how you handled it, he's upset his actions were stupid, but he wants to be mad at someone other than himself. You only made it a little easier for him to do that since the reveal was more public, and that's easy to point to as the wrongdoing. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her brother-in-law? Please let us know.
Maybe in the future he'll think before using someone else's hygiene products without asking them first.
Am I the jerk for telling my friend he can't move into my house until he grows up? So I, male 23, fairly recently became a first-time homeowner. I've spent the last few months fixing the place up and turning it into a nice little spot. I have a friend who I'll refer to as Bobby, male 24, that I told could be a roommate after I got the house fully together and finished. Bobby has come to visit a few times during the restoration process so he can check out the area. He's from out of state. He loves the area and neighborhood and decided he wanted to live here. This is when I initially extended the offer. I figured it would be fun and would make life a little easier having a second set of hands to help keep up with the maintenance, pool, lawn, etc. Bobby initially told me that he's been working and saving to move out of his parents' place as he's been living with them for the last few years, and that he'd be more than willing to help out with yard work and such. Yesterday, we have a phone call, and he asks me when he can move in. I tell him that whenever he's ready, he can move in. We then got into a deeper discussion about expectations and boundaries and stuff, just so we were on the same page. That's when I find out that he currently has no money saved, just enough to get moved here, gas and a U-Haul, not even first month's rent. He tells me his plan was to just get moved in and find a job. I asked him how he has no savings as he works full-time and his parents are currently paying his bills and he's not paying rent. He tells me that he's been going out a lot because he hates being at his house. I then told him that I'd feel more comfortable if he had at least a month's rent/bills saved before he moved in, because in my old apartment, I had a friend move in under similar circumstances and he ended up just freeloading for 3 months. Bobby then gets a defensive tone and says,
So, you didn't want a friend moving in? You just wanted someone to help you pay your mortgage.
I then told him, I love you and you're always welcome in my home, but you can't live here until you do some growing up. I haven't spoken with him since, but a mutual friend of ours reached out and said I was being too harsh on him and should cut him a break. I don't think I'm the jerk here because all I'm doing is trying to avoid living with someone that has no real plan or money that I'll just end up taking care of. Not the jerk. I've encountered this breed before. Bobby says,
You don't want a friend moving in, you just wanted someone to help you pay your mortgage.
Bobby means, I don't want to move in with a friend. I just want to mooch off someone other than my parents. Your mutual friend is perfectly capable of cutting Bobby a break on their own. Not the jerk. The way he lashed out when you told him he needed to be able to pay rent and his share of the bills before he moved in, combined with the fact that he saved up what he knew he needed to travel but chose not to save any money for living expenses, shows that freeloading is exactly what he intended to do. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Bobby? Please let us know.
Tell Bobby I want Hank to give me a call. I need some propane and propane accessories.
You are too expensive to fire. When I sold cars, we had a really nice showroom with large glass windows. One day, I was tasked with moving a powerful V8 sports car, which was in the showroom. I was supposed to reverse the vehicle into position, however, the floor had just been mopped. I put the car in what I thought was reverse, manual transmission. When I started to let up the clutch, I felt the wheel slip, so I thought, floor is slippery, just give it a bit more. I give it a little bit more, and the car launches forward into the large glass pan. Thank goodness it had a hard top. When this happened, I freaked, let go of the clutch, and the car had enough power to break the glass pane. This was right before opening. The glass pane was massive that extended maybe 20 feet wide and 20 feet tall. I'm not sure, but it was big. All of this right before opening on a Saturday. I get called into the GM office, who asks me for the facts. I tell him what happened. He asks me if I'm okay with doing a breathalyzer. I agree. I hadn't been drinking that morning or the day prior, so I passed. He said, "Well, you're sober, so that's good." I go, "Yeah, I am. This was just an incredibly dumb mistake." He goes, "Yeah, it was." I ask, "So, am I fired?" He laughs. "You are too expensive to fire now." I ask, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Do you know how much it's going to cost me to replace that glass pane?" I go, "A lot, I imagine." He laughs. "Yeah, probably more than the car you used to drive through it with." I go, "Oh, wow. So I'm not fired?" He goes, "Oh no, I know you will never ever do that again. From now on, you're in charge of moving cars inside the showroom. Now get back to work." And I went back to work. I personally refused to move cars in the showroom for about a month or so. Eventually, I started doing it again and did not have another accident. No, I'm not giving you my personal property. I work front desk, night audit, at a hotel. I get entitled people day in and day out. I'm sure you guys can relate. But sometimes certain interactions just rub you the wrong way. Tonight was one of those nights. I'm in the office doing work off to the side, and up walks this woman. Nothing strange about her. She just asked for an iPhone charger. I told her we didn't keep them around property, and she peered around the corner where my phone was charging in our little office area. "You don't have a charger? Really?" Me. "Well, that's kind of my personal one." Karen, looking at me expectantly. "And?" Me. "And it's not the hotel's, it's mine." "And you can't just let me use it?" Me. "No, it's my personal one from home." "Okay, and? You're really not going to give it to me?" Me. "No, ma'am." "Are you serious? You're not going to give it to me?" Me. "No, I'm not exactly obligated to give you my personal things. Like I said, it isn't the hotel's, it's my own." "Are you serious? Not obligated? Seriously?" Me. "Sorry, it's just not something I'm going to do." Then, every time this woman passed by the desk, she huffed and puffed. "Not obligated. Not obligated." Like a crazy person. It hasn't even been 20 minutes and it's happened twice. Honestly, why are people so unhinged? Would she give me something of hers just because? And why get so bent out of shape because of it? I came to learn she didn't have her charger because she left it in her car after the police impounded it. How did I find this out? She was talking to the poor 20-something-year-old boys in the lobby trying to chill about me. And the good sports were making eye contact with me and laughing while she went on and on about how much of a jerk I was. With me at the front desk and a few feet behind her. Karen. "Can you believe that front desk girl? I came down earlier and asked her for a charger, and she said she wasn't obligated to give me one. Can you believe that?" Guy. "Well, I see where she's coming from. It is hers, right?" "Well, she didn't have to be such a jerk about it, you know. I just needed it for a little while." Guy. "Oh, well, I thought she handled that professionally to me. We were sitting here when you asked. She doesn't have to let you." "You're serious? You're on her side? Come on, take my side. Tell me she was a jerk." The guy is speechless. So yeah, that's how my night went. Luckily, the guys were good sports and laughed it off. They even apologized when they said what they needed to. Agreed with her, to get her to just drop it. My Karen mother won't let me go to work. Cast. We've got me, Dragon Crystal, myself. We've got Mom, my entitled mom. We've got Dad, my entitled dad, and Tim, my supervisor. Backstory. I've been in lockdown for 2 weeks, ended last night. because of my last shot giving me some side effects. Also because of that, my work schedule account was inactive until my lockdown is lifted. Not to mention, a relative just passed, and my parents, knowing that my lockdown lifted yesterday, still dragged me along with them, while not allowing me to check if I'm on the schedule or not. Now on to the story. Like I've mentioned above, that I was in lockdown for 2 weeks and my work schedule account was inactive during that time, and I was unable to see if I was going to work today or not. I just heard about my relative passing last night before going to bed. I believe my workplace account reactivated around 6 a.m. of today, but I'm not entirely sure because my parents came bursting into my room demanding that I go and help babysit the kids, my cousins, while they helped set everything up. Me, drowsy state of mind. What? Mom,
Hurry up and get dressed. We have to go help out at our relatives.
me. Mom, you know how much funerals freak me out, right? Mom,
Stop making excuses and get up now.
me. Fine. Wait, last night was when my lockdown lifted. My supervisor might have scheduled me to work today.
I said stop making excuses and get ready.
The entire car ride there, they'd be peeking into the backseat and complaining at me to stop checking on my phone and to pay attention to them. Like I'm supposed to backseat drive or something. Not supposed to, I know. As soon as we arrive, I'm ushered into the kitchen by my mom, where my aunts were along with their kids, my fellow cousins, while my dad walks into a separate room with my many uncles. My aunts have been cooking and mourning over my grandpa, whom I rarely ever saw or knew. My mom immediately tells me to either help with cooking or just keep an eye on the kids, since I'm so used to being the babysitter for any relative's kids I stick to babysitting. 7 a.m. rolls around, and I want to check if I'm scheduled to work or not. I pull my phone out, and as I'm typing in my login, my mom steps over and screams at me to put my phone away, or I'm going to get punished. I'm almost 30, not 18, so I just slip my phone away again. 8 a.m. rolls around, and I sneak my phone out again. This time, my dad snatches my phone out of my hand and threatens to break it because I'm spending too much time playing video games and don't deserve to have a phone, before handing it over to my mom, who happily slips it into her purse. Great. 9:15 a.m. is rolling around now, usually the time my shift starts. I'm just constantly checking the kitchen stove clock, and I'm freaking out, thinking about how I'm going to explain this to my supervisor if he calls my phone and I don't pick up. I go over to my mom and ask for my phone back. Her smug response.
Why do you need it?
Me. Because I might have been scheduled to work today, and my lockdown was lifted yesterday. Mom.
I'm sure they don't need you today. It's Saturday, and we're busy here. Your dad and I don't have time to take you back home.
We were literally just sitting around, cooking and chatting. Oh, so busy. Me. Can I at least check if I'm on the schedule or not, so I can call out? Because we're usually the busiest on the weekends.
No, stop wasting my time and go babysit your cousins or help cook.
I'm livid and just go back to babysitting, while dreading the call from my supervisor. Sure enough, a couple hours later, 3 p.m., an hour ago in real life, my mom finally hands me my phone saying,
Oh, someone named Tim called you at 9:36 a.m.
Me. Dread fills my already shaken up heart. I told you that I might be scheduled to work today. Mom.
Well, I didn't know that.
How would you know? You don't work there.
You should have checked before coming here.
Me, boiling with anger. Maybe if you listened to me and had let me check before forcing me into the car, this wouldn't have happened. Now I've got a no-call, no-show marked onto my attendance. Mom.
Stop being so dramatic. It's not like you're not late to work all the time. That's why you were fired from your other job.
BS. Me, more angry now. I was laid off at one job, and that was my first job. For some BS reasons. Every other job I quit for my own personal reasons. Or the cinema was because we got bought out, so everyone and myself lost our jobs because of that. Mom.
Well, you still got fired.
Before heading back to the kitchen. Well, forget you too, jerk. My dad, hearing us arguing, comes out to start complaining at me about being disrespectful, being an ungrateful brat, etc., before heading back into the other room. I'm just sitting in the hallway private messaging Tim about my current situation, and his only response is, "We'll talk about it during your next shift," which has yet to be posted. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that no one was going to like the food she was serving at our wedding? To preface this, we live in the South, USA. I'm a bridesmaid in my friend's wedding, the maid of honor to be specific. Therefore, I'm helping her plan a lot of her ideas and DIY some stuff. Her fiancé is in the military and currently in a different state, so he can't help that much with the wedding right now on the little stuff. She likes sort of unique things and tries to fit into a certain aesthetic on almost everything she does. The other day we were discussing what kind of caterer she wanted. I told her that the first thing to do was figure out what type of food she wanted and then choose a caterer based off of that. Well, after a few days, she texted me and told me that she found the perfect style food and was ready to go sample some caterers. I asked her for details, but she said she wanted to keep it a secret, but she wanted me to go with her to sample and I would find out then. I agreed. Well, when we arrived to an old Roman or Greek, I'm unsure, shop/place, I'm a little confused. She tells me to trust her on this, so I try and let it go as I like trying new foods anyways. The food we sample was just not something I like. It was olives, the expensive, strong-smelling cheese, and some random dried berries and nuts. I'm not a picky eater, but I just didn't like it, and I honestly wasn't sure how this could even be a meal. Maybe finger foods, but not a meal. It has very odd tastes. I asked my friend if her plan was to serve this as the main course at her wedding, and she says yes, along with some fruit. She's not vegetarian or vegan, and neither is her family or fiancé. She asked me my honest opinion if people would like it, and I told her I didn't think people were going to like it. As I said, we live in the deep South, USA, and everyone has pretty basic tastes in food, which is what I told her. I told her this could be okay as like finger foods or cocktail hours. People still probably wouldn't eat it, but not the main course. It was really not enough to be a main course, even if it was good food. She called me a jerk, as apparently this is the only type of food that will fit her wedding theme. I would rather be honest with her now than people trash-talking her wedding because of gross food. Am I the jerk here? Karen neighbor complained about my tree. Big mistake. One day I came home and my mom told me that the right side neighbor talked to her. Neighbor claimed that a city official came over while we weren't there, stopped by her house, and asked her to pass along a message. The tree on our side of the fence is too unruly, and a few branches are getting too close to the neighbor's house. The city will fine us if we don't cut down those branches. So the city was going to fine us without an official notice? I was certain that the neighbor either got the warning herself or was lying for some free gardening. It was our tree, so we would have done it if she had asked us properly, but my mom and I decided to just cut it down so it didn't become an issue again. She sent me over to let the neighbors know, and after some pleasantries, I told her of our decision. Her expression immediately darkened.
The tree is in a perfect place to cover my bedroom window from the SoCal sun, and it gives me plenty of privacy. Wouldn't it be cheaper to trim it?
Cue malicious compliance to the city warning. I told her with a concerned face that we were anxious about the city's fine, and that if we had to keep trimming it, it would be costly and a huge headache. At that point, some slight panic seeped into her voice, and she offered to pay for the trimming herself. In other words, we wouldn't have to do a thing, nor pay a single penny. A better man would have said yes, but by this point, I was a bitter man. I kept a concerned face, and I told her if I ever left, no plans to because of my mom's health, my mom would have to deal with it, and I wouldn't want her to have to keep checking in with the neighbors for fear of a fine. At the end of the day, our tree, our fine, our decision. I left shortly after. The tree came down that weekend, and so did the neighbor's blinds to her bedroom. A few years since then, and as of yet, I still haven't seen them go back up. And to think, if she had just asked nicely, we would still be trimming those branches at no cost to her. $600 to-go order, $0 tip. I'm a server, 22, female, at a Chinese restaurant, one of the best, if not the best, in town. Thursday afternoon, we had a man, let's call him Martin, call in to place a very large to-go order to be picked up Saturday, today. The cashier taking his order is the best at the restaurant, Cole. Cole just turned 18. Cole spends about 20 minutes on the phone with Martin, putting in his order. This man ordered an insane amount of food, all party trays. The bill was $599. It's only me and Cole at the restaurant today besides the chefs. The order starts coming out, and I'm helping Cole pack. We have 3 gigantic boxes to use to hold everything. 7 trays of General Tso's chicken, 7 broccoli and beefs, a massive order of white rice and fried rice, 100 steamed dumplings, and we threw in a free party platter of crab rangoons for them. We have the 2 massive boxes on a rolling cart and the third sitting on the line counter. Martin literally rushes in full-on speed walking with his lifting accomplice. Pick up for Martin. Me and Cole go to the kitchen to bring out the food. Cole asks me to push the cart out with the receipt for them to sign. They paid over the phone, and he'll bring out the third box. I go out with the cart, politely ask Martin to sign his receipt. He grabs a pen and very quickly marks a line through the tip amount. I'm thinking, okay, I know this man is not about to not leave a tip on a $600 order. Surely he'll tip, right? I mean, I know it's not a dine-in service, but still it is packaged food. A lot of preparation. Cole and the 2 chefs help these guys load everything into their minivan. At this point, I'm already deciding how I will bring up politely the $0 tip. I'm hoping he slips him cash. I'm behind the counter, watching this guy carefully through the window. He comes back inside, telling Cole he needs hot mustard. Dude starts shoveling handfuls of packets into a bag right at the counter. I slide his signed receipt across the counter directly in front of him and say, "You know, Cole is the one who took your order. He packaged everything." I point to the dashed out tip line. Martin: "I know." Me: "It's $600 worth of food." Martin: "I know." Starts getting irritated. In disbelief, I walk to the back hallway to breathe, trying to contain my anger. Cole was telling me before Martin showed up, even if they tip me 10%, that's $60. $60! This kid works so hard, busts his butt every shift. Not even a minute later, I start walking up front and hear this man yelling. He's screaming at the 2 chefs, who barely speak English by the way. "That girl doesn't know what she's talking about. That jerk needs to shut her mouth." I'm standing there and he's looking at me, pointing, flailing his arms. "Well, now he gets no tip. I was going to tip him cash, but she just ruined it for him. Ridiculous." Martin proceeds to try and run out of the side door, goes for the wrong side and slams himself against the blinds instead, fumbles around and finally figures out how to stumble out, still yelling. I'm sorry, but never in all of my restaurant experience have I seen someone wait to tip cash so long after signing the check, especially on a catered order. Customers who tip do not wait, and at this restaurant, I've had the owner do the same for me at a table. He's followed customers out who have stiffed me even. Always had my back and made sure to stick up for me and other servers. I wanted to do the same for this kid, and what gets me the most is that I was so polite, and yet this man immediately started shouting at me. I feel kind of bad, but the dude was a jerk. Edit: I would like to add the tip would be 100% Cole's, as he is a cashier and gets to keep to-go tips. I'm a server who would never expect tips from to-go. I was just helping him, as I am the senior employee at this restaurant. Is tipping something most people do on to-go orders? Honestly asking. I was wondering the same thing. We have a restaurant like OP described near me, and I've never tipped for a to-go order. I've never seen others do it either. Sit-down dinner, absolutely. I've always been a good tipper. I've never heard until now that to-go staff are paid the same as wait staff, and I'd say the common customer wouldn't know that. As a customer, we have no reason to know that. So I'm just saying no tips on a to-go order for most, not all, maybe just an honest mistake. I do not believe I have ever tipped for any kind of pickup or to-go order. I suppose I never thought about it beyond me thinking to-go equals no waitress. Not gonna lie, I have never tipped on a takeout order in my life. Assuming you're in the US, that's not even close to being a norm here. The customer was a giant jerk. That being said, if you pointed to the tip line on my takeout receipt, I'd tell you to buzz off. Ask the manager/owner to add automatic gratuity on orders over X amount if this is an issue. I don't know. First of all, if someone is ordering that much food, they're probably stressed to the max about getting it all to its destination without it being cold or totally messed up. Also, I just ordered about $1,200 worth of lumber and the forklift driver loaded it all on my trailer and tied it down. They're not even allowed to get tips. I'm not sure why there's an exception to tip someone handing you bags of food at a to-go order. Do you tip people at the counter at McDonald's when you have a big order? Honest question, what's the difference? Well, what do? Do you leave a tip when you pick up your to-go order or not? Please let us know. Bruh. Husband got sick of hearing my daughter play the piano, so he destroyed it. My husband and I have been together for 2.5 years. I have a daughter, Callie. She's 13. She loves instrumental music and piano has been her #1 interest. I'm not saying this because she's my daughter, But really, I see her talent as special, and more importantly, she uses it to express her feelings, especially for her deceased father who passed away when she was 7. She always says that she, in a way, connects to him through playing piano. So I encouraged her to do more, and her grandparents bought her a $6,000 piano that she was so thrilled with. The whole family encourages her, but my husband thinks she's being distracted from school, her real future, etc. He doesn't attend her plays, doesn't help with the academy, doesn't even take the time to listen to her playing, and every time he comes home and hears her playing upstairs, he'd lecture us about how this activity is just a waste of time. I sat him down and told him about Callie picking up on that bad vibe. He just got mad and said that he was doing my job for me and ensuring she doesn't get distracted from school, although her grades are good. We went back and forth on this, and I made it clear that this needs to stop. He said okay, and that was the end of it. On Sunday, a huge argument ensued in the house because my husband claimed Callie woke him up on his day off with her loud playing. He issued an ultimatum. Either the piano goes, or he gets rid of it himself. I asked where should I take it. He said Callie's grandparents' house, but Callie didn't want to. After we left, I found out that my husband took it to the junkyard his dad works at and cut it into pieces. A big argument ensued, and we literally had a screaming match in front of his family over this. I gave him 2 days to pay me for a new one, despite him apologizing and saying he acted in a moment of desperation and frustration. He said the only way that he could pay for it is by using his savings that was supposed to go towards his new garage as a side business. He complained about me forcing him to pay and ruining his business before it even starts. He kept sending his family as middlemen to get me to give him at least 4 months, but I refused and stood my ground, despite being called unreasonable since it's a piano versus a new business. Am I the jerk for forcing him to pay and not giving him time? Edit. No, he didn't have an issue with whatever Callie was doing at first until we started living together. At first, I thought that as a family, we tend to get annoyed by stuff other family members do, but apparently this is not the case. By the way, tonight or tomorrow morning is the timeline I've given him, and so far I haven't heard from him or his dad. You need to leave this relationship. Sue him for the cost of the piano and divorce him for being a complete jerk. Not the jerk. Give him a simple choice. His business is delayed while he takes accountability for his actions, or his business is ruined by having theft charges brought against him. Edit. And you're the jerk for allowing your husband to treat her so poorly for so long. Edit 2. The reason the family is yelling at you is because in most jurisdictions, the father could also be charged for receiving stolen property. Am I the jerk for calling my brother a horrible dad and a crappy husband? I, 16 male, have an older brother who's 26, who recently had his first son a month ago. His wife, who's 26, never wanted a kid, but my brother convinced her to have one. This week was the first time I visited since the baby was born, since we live states away. The place was pretty dirty, but I shrugged it off, thinking they're new parents and have their hands full. Then I see his wife, who looked as if she hadn't showered since the delivery, slept in a week, or anything except take care of the baby. Compared to my brother, who was clean, well-kept, and rested, she was a train wreck. While we were there for 4 hours, I really saw how much he contributed. Every time the baby would cry, my brother would hand him off to my mom or his wife. He ran out of the nursery, yelling for someone else to change the baby's diaper, and turns out it was barely even messy. Other examples of his negligence include insisting we leave the baby home alone while we went out for dinner, refusing to bathe him, and yelling at him to just go to sleep. My parents had seen enough in person and set everyone down, me included. We told him he needs to grow up and help out, but he just kept making excuses like how tired he is from work. For the record, he works 6 to 7 hours a day, Monday through Friday, sometimes a half day on Saturdays. His logic was that because he works, he can avoid his duties as a father. He's not the breadwinner, by the way. The mother works as well, willingly at home. He eventually was mad that we wanted him to be a dad, and he just said, "I'm a man. I don't take care of him, other than sports and teaching him to be a man." I snapped and started yelling how he's a horrible dad and ignoring his kid that he pressured his wife to have. I called him a lousy dad and how sad it is that he makes everyone else do his duties for him. I called him a deadbeat, adding how he shouldn't have had a kid if he didn't want to help out. I said I was sorry his wife married him because he was such a bad husband and how much better she can do and added how I wouldn't be surprised if they were divorced by the time he was 30. Everyone was silent. My parents told me to wait outside, then later told me to apologize because it was rude and unnecessary. I refused to, but I heard him crying. I don't know if I took it too far, but I think he needs a reality check so that kid grows up with him present. We tried over the phone before and only were being nice, but that didn't work. I need to know, Reddit. Am I the jerk? Edit. Hello, lots of comments and messages asking if sister-in-law is okay. Thank you for your concern. It makes me think humanity isn't doomed yet. She's okay. She got the rest she needed while we were there and cleaned herself up. She said that she would probably start making my brother do baby things so she could take care of herself. Wow, I can barely begin to dissect this whole situation. Your brother pressures his wife to have a baby but does absolutely nothing to help. He works regular hours and she's a full-time mom plus work from home, but he's too tired to give her any help, so the house is a mess and she's exhausted and doesn't even have time to take a shower. He won't take care of the baby at all? He even wants to leave it home alone? I hope no one agreed with that. Good on you for calling out your brother. Too bad your parents thought you were rude. Most posters here frown on so-called rude awakenings or telling it like it is, or being brutally honest. Because to be honest, people just use those as excuses to be harsh and mean. But in this case, it was appropriate and necessary. Your brother needed a swift kick, not the jerk. And your parents are borderline jerks for letting their 16-year-old say what they should have said. That poor little kid. What is your brother teaching anyone about being a man, and how does he expect his lessons to turn out? His 16-year-old brother is a better man than he is and had to teach an adult about being a husband and father. I hope you can be part of your nephew's life, even from a distance, because you are going to be the positive male figure for him. Not the jerk. If facts hurt, then maybe he needs to change his behavior. Your parents are completely out of line to ask you to apologize, and he needs to cry. Imagine how much his poor wife has been feeling like crying. She's grown and delivered a human being, and the person who is supposed to be her adult partner has taken a mental trip to 1949. Way to be a good brother-in-law. Get yourself a treat. You have to take this paper. This is my dad's story and involves my brother, who I will call John Smith for anonymity. One day an officer shows up and knocks on the door. My dad answers and the officer says, "Hello, is this the residence of John Smith?" My dad says yes it is. The officer asks my dad if he was home, to which my dad says no he's not. Since my brother was still a youth, the officer asks my dad if he was a legal guardian of my brother, to which he says yes. The officer hands him a paper and it was a summons to appear in court for some charges against him and says John Smith needs to be in court on this date. My dad tries to hand the paper back and says, "It wasn't him, you have the wrong guy," to which officer cuts him off and says, "No, I do not, and he needs to be in court that day." Again, my dad says, "John Smith did not do this and you have the wrong guy," and tries to hand back the papers again. What I need to add is my brother was a troubled youth who had countless run-ins with the law, so every cop in town knew him and had arrested him dozens of times. So this officer was quite happy to serve my brother one more time. He even knew exactly where my brother lived without even looking at the address on the paper. After my dad said for the last time, "You have the wrong guy," the officer got nasty and said in a crappy tone of voice, "No, I do not have the wrong guy, and he has to show up for court. If he doesn't, he will be in trouble." This upset my dad since the officer was being so rude. So my dad says to him, "Okay, so this is my piece of paper then, and I can do with it what I want?" And the officer said, "Yes, it is." So my dad ripped it into a bunch of pieces and threw it into the dirt. The officer then laughs and says, "It doesn't matter, he still needs to be in court," to which my dad begins to laugh loudly in his face. The officer, not understanding why, had a blank stare on his face. My dad then asks, "Hey, what was the address on your paperwork?" To which the officer starts looking at the copy of the paperwork he was still holding, and my dad watched as a confused look came over his face. "This isn't even the address you had on the paper, and I was trying to tell you that, but you were being so rude and cutting me off every time. Now look at the full name. Do you not notice anything? It says John Rip Smith, and my son's name is John Pletty Smith. Again, you have the wrong guy. Now take your piece of paper and buzz off." The officer was shocked. "You ripped my paperwork. That was an official copy. Blah, blah, blah." My dad again laughs at him. No. You said that was my paperwork. Now kindly take your garbage and get off my property. Am I the jerk for insisting my sister-in-law not call herself mom when talking to her biological daughter? So my wife and I adopted our niece this year. She's been in our custody for nearly a year and a half full-time and off and on for the previous 2 years. She just turned 13. My daughter has lived with her biological paternal grandmother since she was about 2 years old. In that time, she had no father figure, and her grandma refused to let her see her as a mother figure. My daughter was desperate for parental figures. When she first came to stay with us, long-term, back in 2019, she asked, "Can I call you dad and mom?" at just 9 years old. We let her, but she would call her biological mom bio-mom, and her bio-dad just by his first name. She had no real relationship with either of them. They spent time in prison, and even when they were not in prison, they mostly ignored her. When we got custody, my sister-in-law came out of the woodwork. I think she was hopeful that if we could get custody away from grandma, then she could get custody from us. The problem is, she's still a junkie, and she still has a long unresolved criminal record, no permanent address, etc. We got custody easy from grandma, and then we asked for adoption per daughter's request. Our lawyer gave sister-in-law 2 options: sign over parental rights or prove in court that you should continue to have them despite your daughter's desire to be adopted. As part of the agreement, we set up for my sister-in-law to call daughter regularly. She usually calls Sundays for a while, first talking to my wife for 30 minutes to an hour, then asking for my daughter. She spends 90% of that call talking about herself and often doesn't even ask our daughter how she's doing. The problem comes in that sister-in-law refers to herself as mom, her husband of barely a year as stepdad, his estranged kids my daughter has never even met as her step-siblings, and my wife and I as aunt and uncle. But the adoption has happened. By every meaningful way, I am dad, my wife is mom, and bio-mom is now aunt at best, and her husband is just that, her husband. His kids are of no relation at all. I've asked her multiple times to stop using these terms and to use the correct ones. It annoys my daughter and is usually the catalyst of her just walking away from the call. She's tried to correct my sister-in-law, but she refuses to change her ways. So now I just hang up. My daughter rarely actually wants to talk to her and will often just leave the room mid-conversation. When she does, I just end the call or let my wife pick up. My wife thinks I'm being too harsh, but I have no patience for this person, her boundary stomping, and neither does my daughter. My wife thinks I'm the jerk for not reminding sister-in-law every time and giving her a warning. I say she's had enough warnings. Edit. I get a lot of the same comments. 1. We cannot just cut all contact. We have a PACA where we have to give the opportunity for communication. We can reduce it to letter writing, but we would have to submit evidence of mistreatment, and my sister-in-law passes off her flubs as just slips of the tongue. Not sure how that would hold up. 2. My daughter has the idea of a fairy tale mom who magically shows up and is perfect, but her biological mom is nothing like this. 3. My daughter has expressed her discomfort with her biological mom's use of words, but struggles to express those in the moment. We're working on it. 4. Yes, we see a counselor. Not the jerk. Your daughter's not okay with it. You're not the jerk at all. OP. That's what gets me. It makes her mad. Talked with her just to make sure I understood her on Saturday, and she was like, "What does she not get? I'm adopted now, and you are dad and mom. How is this so hard? Ugh." Say that in your best preteen voice with at least 2 eye rolls. You're not the jerk, but ask your daughter what she wants you to do about it. If anything, before you take further action. She may want you to support her in telling her biological mother to cut it out, and in that case, go ahead. She may want to do it herself, in which case your role is to step back and let her, while making sure she knows she can always call you in if there's anything she wants a hand with. Or she may just want to stop talking to her, in which case that should be her decision too, unless you've got a legal visitation agreement that requires it. Am I the jerk for telling a bride it was not that difficult for people to upstage her at her wedding? My family and I are from Albania, but we live in the US. My cousin David got married to his wife Lizzie this weekend. In Albania, we always go all out for weddings, and David wanted to keep many cultural traditions. Lizzie didn't like the idea. Lizzie had sent out the invites via mail and also had some rules written down, as in no kids allowed, black tie dress code, absolutely no +1s unless both bride and groom approve of the +1. I am engaged, and I thought my fiancé would be included, but David said Lizzie is against +1. I said that even if Lizzie is against it, my fiancé has been in the family for years, way longer than Lizzie has been around. Plus, he's a friend of David as well, so he would come as a friend. David was frustrated and said Lizzie has set down most of these rules, and whenever he goes against her, she gets mad, so we should cut him some slack and just bear with it for his sake. I thought it was ridiculous how he didn't stand up for himself, but not my business after all. All of my Albanian side side-eyed the fact that the wedding was kid-free because we're used to involving kids at the weddings. The bride and her family refused to make any compromises about it and show respect to David and his wishes. But again, none of our business despite our frustration. Despite the black tie dress code, most of the bride's family turned up in jeans and flannel shirts, and the women just wore casual maxi dresses. Our side of the family dressed more formal. The bride just wore a white knee-length lace dress from H&M. The reception took place in a cabin by the lake, which had animal head trophies hanged on the walls. The only music we heard was some slow pop songs and then country music. Every time the DJ tried to play some traditional Balkan music, the bride's family would get him to change it. The bride also made a big deal out of the fact that we were dressed formal and how we overdid it. We upstaged her. She kept complaining about it all night long and was throwing tantrums to David about how we as his family are very disrespectful. After constant insults thrown around all night long, I told her to chill out. She said she won't chill out because we disrespected her. I told her, first of all, if she was so scared she was going to be upstaged, she shouldn't request black tie dress code. And secondly, to be honest, it was not that hard to upstage her because I've seen grandma dresses fancier than the one she's wearing. So she's the underdressed one for her own wedding, which was supposed to be a black tie event. David's entire family sided with me, but David said I'm the jerk for speaking to his bride like that on her wedding day. I told him that if the bride requires kindness, she should start with herself. Am I the jerk? Your wording could possibly score you some jerk points, but the bride has very much upstaged you in the jerk department. She sounds horrible, and David needs to grow a backbone if he doesn't want his life dictated to him. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You're a jerk for being judgmental? No, this is a fair moment to be judged for how you treat your extended family and your husband's culture. Heck, this is a good moment to judge your cousin and reevaluate your respect for him. It is their wedding, and they are completely entitled to do what they want for their wedding. However, if they want black tie plus jeans, then they should specify it. I don't have keys for a store I don't work at. My workplace is a small boutique-style pet food / self-wash / grooming salon. I'm the groomer. I show up at 8 for early morning appointments, and we open at 10. Next door is a General Dollar, and the management must be the worst because they're constantly having issues keeping staff and staying open. When this story took place last year, the manager wasn't showing up on time, and when I'd come to unlock my shop, I'd see the Dollar General workers waiting outside, especially in the snow, and I started a good rapport with them as I'd let them come into my store and warm up if they needed to while waiting for their perpetually late manager. One morning, I showed up to more than the usual number of people milling around the parking lot. I generally get to work at 7:45, so seeing anyone other than Dollar General workers is unusual. As I was grabbing some equipment from my car, a man said to me, "Oh, they've been waiting for you." This was surprising to me, but not unheard of. Sometimes my early grooming appointments are super early because of work or school drop-offs, which is why I take appointments at the time in the first place. As if to punctuate this idea, I saw a regular and 2 of his dogs wandering around a grassy area taking care of business. I greeted my clients, exchanged a typical southern greeting, "Hey girl, how you doing?" "Oh, it's doing. You keeping warm?" "I'm trying. Have a good day. You too." With the Dollar General workers, I knew by sight and opened the shop. A few hours later, the owner, my boss, walked into the grooming room with her "I hate people" look on her face. "I got a complaint about you, antisocial." My blood ran cold. "Me? What? Why?" She shook her head a few times, laughing. "You didn't unlock the Dollar General this morning when you unlocked our door." I attempted to reconcile this idea with reality. I failed spectacularly. "Huh? This guy called to complain about you. You unlocked our door, but didn't even try to unlock the next door." I stared at my boss, fish-mouthing until the dog I was grooming tried to stick his head inside it. That was when my brain caught up with what was happening. Yeah, I didn't unlock the Chinese restaurant on the other side of us either. I guess I'm just slacking today. My boss went on to tell me that she pointed out to the gentleman that I do not work at the General of Dollars and that my key wouldn't have fit the lock. Apparently, the gentleman firmly believed that I should have tried. My boss advised him to call Dollar General to complain, and this was where she lost it and started cracking up. And his response was to say that I worked at the pet shop, not Dollar General, so he was calling her. She said, "Well, I don't know what you think I can do, sir," and hung up. My Karen sister allowed her son to give my dog dreadlocks. My sister is a single mom with one son who's 14, and they've been staying at my place for the last few because they lost their apartment and she's saving up money to get them a new apartment. She, however, has driven me crazy lately. She's up late at night on her phone or watching TV. I go to work at 3:30 a.m., so I've been getting less sleep. Her son constantly bothers my daughter. She has brought men over from the bars, etc. She doesn't do chores, they make messes, and I've addressed these issues so many times, and I just get ignored. The final straw came when I came home from work last night, and I saw that my dog had dreadlocks. Not a lot, but like maybe 8 or so. What the heck? I'm not sure if that's alright. He sure didn't seem comfortable and was pawing at them. I'm worried because I've heard horror stories about people who didn't wash properly and nasty stuff grew inside of their dreadlocks. I asked him about it, and he said he thought it would look cool and he's not finished yet. I was so upset when I saw that, and later I found out that he posted it on TikTok. That was the final straw. I told my sister she had to leave. She, of course, pulled the whole "but we're family" card, saying how she's a struggling mom and how it's just a dog and it's not a big deal. I told her I'm sick of this. He knew better, and quite honestly, I'm tired of living with them. She, of course, called my parents, who sided with me, thankfully, but our siblings and cousins took her side, who bombarded me with texts and calls telling me that I need to take them back in. She eventually moved in with my brother. Anyways, I'm wondering if I did the wrong thing here. I feel bad because they're struggling, but giving my dog dreadlocks was just crossing the line. Cardio Karen and the Grand Hospital Tour. About 5 years ago, my girlfriend was in the ICU of one of our largest hospitals in Sydney, Australia. Needless to say, it was a stressful time for me, but she's all good now. This story occurred as I was walking back from one of the hospital's cafes to see my girlfriend. I was stopped in the corridor by an older lady, maybe early 60s, wide as she was tall, who asked me to take her to the cardio ward. Her tone was very polite, and I told her I don't work there, but directed her to reception. Her ladyship did not like this response.
"Don't mess around. I know you work here. Take me there."
Her sudden change in demeanor stunned me.
"Come along. I don't have all day,"
she huffed. At this point, I should mention I was wearing a full suit and tie combo, as I had an unavoidable meeting later that day. Now, I like a navy suit as much as the next suave bloke, but the doctors in this hospital, when not in scrubs, mostly wore slacks and a collared shirt. Given the missus was a bit under the weather, I was sleep-deprived, anxious, and had no patience for her ladyship being a jerk. Okay, follow me. We started down the corridor, through some doors, and up a flight of stairs, her pacing grumpily behind me. I could see a sign ahead, cardio ward to the right. So, unfortunately for her ladyship, left we went. We went up lifts, down lifts, upstairs and down again. A full 10 minutes into our Royal Prince Alfred Hospital tour, it must have occurred to her that I had no idea where I was going. A porter with a gurney stepped out of the side door and she immediately accosted him.
"Your staff member here is wasting my time."
It was almost comedic the way he looked down at her, up at me, down at her, then up to me.
Did you tell this lady you work here?
No, mate. Literally the opposite. I smiled at the porter. The porter frowned. Where you headed, love? By now, she was quite exasperated.
"What is wrong with you people? He should have taken me to the cardio ward, and don't love me."
The porter, trying to hide his smile, told her to follow him and off they went. I overheard her grumble something about staff complaint as they waddled away. Gosh only knows what my write-up would have said about me. I hurried back to the ICU ward, happily armed with a humorous story to cheer up my girlfriend. Karen ex-girlfriend demands the engagement ring I never gave her, gets arrested. A while back, I was dating this girl for roughly 2 years. I thought things were going great, but apparently she was just dating me because she liked to tell people she was in a relationship. No, that's how it went with her. The way she described me was too immature, decent at lovin', and honestly not worth the rest of her life. Exact words she said to a friend of hers after we broke up. Anywho, I'm getting ahead of myself. I went out and bought a ring, had this entire thing planned out to propose to her. However, she was suddenly not available for several weeks in a row. Well, my fears rang true as she suddenly showed up at my place one day. She acted like everything was normal as we talked, and she was grabbing everything that was hers. About halfway through, I just kind of looked at her and said, "Don't forget your hairdryer. It would be awkward to have to come back over after you dump me." This sparked a long and awkward conversation where she was fake crying. I had realized right then and there that I was an idiot. The way she acted, the way she spoke, and the way she treated me just screamed that she did not care. I was devastated, but seeing her made me angry. I had realized that she was lying to me this entire time. About a month later, a friend of hers called me up, asked if she could come over to talk. I asked why. She said that my ex upset her and she wanted to tell me some things. My mind goes to horrifying things, like she needs to warn me I need to see a doctor or things like that. Well, her friend came over and we chatted for a while. See, her friend was beyond upset. She said their friendship was over. So her way to get back at her friend was to hook up with her ex-boyfriend. Me being in my mental state, I said yes. More like I said, sure. Yeah, we can do that if you really want to. So she ends up staying over for a few days as we get to talking about my ex. I tell her about the ring and she had the best idea to get back at my ex. Let's lay down together and post a pic of ourselves with the ring in between us. Yeah, I thought it was a terrible idea, but I wanted my ex to feel like crap, so, well, there you go. Not even 2 hours later, my ex was at the door. We posted the picture at like 11 a.m. and she was at my place at 12:40 something. Right off the bat, she tried to act like breaking up with me was a mistake. She said that I was the best boyfriend she ever had and she was getting scared with how serious things were getting. She said she made a terrible mistake in breaking up with me. Well, her friend immediately goes into a rant about my ex saying that she was manipulative and that neither of us would believe this sob story she was giving. I gotta say, I'm very glad her friend was there because my stupid self was believing my ex. I reminded her of how she treated me when she broke up and that she should go home. She was wasting her time. Well, now she brought up the ring. She said she owned it under the law, said that rings are gifts that I cannot take back. In unison, me and her friend said that I never gave it to her. We both looked at each other and laughed a bit as the absurdity of the situation was getting outrageous. She said she was owed that ring and that she was not leaving without it. At about this time, a police officer came up the stairs wanting to know what the trouble was. I guess we made enough noise that neighbors called the police. The female officer asked what the situation was. Everyone tried to talk at once and the officer shut us down, pointed to my ex and asked her what the problem was. She said she was trying to pick up her stuff after we broke up. She asked me if it were true. I explained the situation, how my ex broke up with me before I had the chance to propose and that she was never given the ring. Throughout the conversation, 2 more officers showed up, one a supervisor. The whole story was explained like 4 times. At one point, my ex said that the money from the ring will let her pay off her car. Ever see a moment when someone says something so outrageous that everyone looks at them in utter disgust? I responded by saying that the ring isn't expensive. It was bought used off of a website, and I reminded her that I'm an IT tech, so this wasn't a ring that was $10,000 to $12,000, more like $1,000 to $1,500. The anger and rage that came over her face was immediately apparent to everyone. She stepped forward and punched me in the chest and kicked at me before being tackled to the ground by the female officer. The supervisor on scene told us to go inside while they got her under control. We did, and about 10 minutes later they came back. They wanted my statement. I told them I didn't want to press charges against her, but they said, yeah, it doesn't work like that. We saw it, so it's being processed. She ended up getting a misdemeanor offense for it. Am I the jerk for not putting my boyfriend's name on my house that my grandmother left me? I really thought this was normal, but so many people are telling me I'm a jerk for not doing it, so it's starting to mess with my head, to be honest. I recently received a house. My grandmother passed and left her 2 houses to my sister and I. We sat down and between the 2 of us decided that she would have the bigger house as she's married and has 2 kids and another on the way, while I would move into the smaller 2-bedroom house. My sister's husband has been added to the title of her house as he helped her pay the taxes on it. I was able to pay the tax on mine by myself as it was cheaper due to being smaller. Because my boyfriend of 3 years didn't contribute financially towards it, I didn't think to put him on the title. We had a housewarming party last weekend, and his parents came up to me towards the end of the night and were going on about how lucky boyfriend and I were to be able to live somewhere like this rent-free, and it gives us such a head start in life, and that they were very appreciative that I had given half the house to my boyfriend. I corrected them that I hadn't, and he wasn't on the title, but was welcome to live with me and not pay rent, so that he had more money to put towards his studies. We are both master's students. They immediately became very judgmental, saying that I was being unfair not putting his name on the title, and that clearly I didn't expect the relationship to last, I didn't trust him, etc. I said they were being unfair, and he wasn't entitled to half of my family's house, and then walked away. Now, numerous members of his family have messaged me and him, calling me names and saying I don't trust him and telling him to watch out because clearly I don't love him, etc. Am I the jerk here? I've gotten a bunch of messages asking me what my boyfriend thinks, so I'll put my response here. I brought it up with him on Monday, and he said that he feels like it's a sign I don't trust him. I said that I wouldn't add a man to the title unless we were married and he was paying for half of the rates and stuff. He said that he feels like I'm blackmailing him into getting married. I said I wasn't. I just wouldn't want to make a huge commitment like giving him half my house without some commitment from him, and he said to just drop it because we're never going to agree, so let's just leave it so we don't argue. Not the jerk. And your boyfriend's family are really overstepping here. This is none of their business, and it's very crass that they feel entitled to comment. He didn't contribute at all. He isn't your spouse. You aren't obligated to add his name to the title. The fact that he didn't defend her from them is a big sign. Even if he disagreed with them, and he's wrong in this case, he needs to be able to step up and tell them to mind their own business. I think OP should heavily consider a prenup. If people overreact to that, then maybe you shouldn't get married yet. Notice, it's not your family, OP. You're not married to him. Even if you were, he should be able to respect whether you add him or not, as it's an inheritance. Please do yourself a favor, and do not under any circumstances add this dude to your house, married or not. Or if you get married, at least don't add him initially. Don't get into a state where you're the one who has half a house to lose should he decide all of a sudden he wants to be married and then run. Please don't do this to yourself. Considering finances are a big deal and a big source of potential arguments here, please sit down as adults and talk through what finances will mean once he moves in rent-free, who pays bills, etc. Last thing you'd want is for him breaking stuff and having you pay because it's your home and he shouldn't have to help pay taxes and other maintenance things for a home he doesn't own. In fact, please talk this out ASAP. Set clear boundaries on who will be responsible for what. Make a fair since you're already pretty much covering rent. Will he buy the food, pay for bills, etc.? Don't let this blessing from your grandma break you up. But if this needs to happen, better it be now before your finances are entangled. You're the jerk. Gotta love Reddit. We've seen this same story time and time again, and anytime the house belongs to the dude and the girlfriend wants her name added onto it, everyone cheers her on and tells her to leave him. Red flag, you deserve so much better, etc. Anytime it's her house and the boyfriend wants his name added to it, people rant about what a bad person he is. Look, if you add a boyfriend or girlfriend's name to your house, you're an idiot. But at least say it both ways. The hypocrisy that you find here on Reddit never ceases to amaze me. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Do yourself a huge favor and dump this dude ASAP. Am I the jerk for telling my niece why I kept a distance from her and her parents growing up? I, 42 male, have a niece, Lily, who's 18. Lily is the result of an affair my ex-fiancé had with my brother while we were still together. I was led to believe Lily was mine throughout the entire pregnancy and almost signed her birth certificate before my ex confessed out of guilt that Lily was probably my brother's. We did a DNA test and Lily wasn't mine. During my teens, I got into an accident which left me infertile. The doctor said my chances of fathering a kid were slim to non-existent, so you can imagine how crushed I felt when I discovered that not only I'm not going to be a father, but I was also betrayed by two people I loved. It's been years since then, and I did well for myself. I'm the first in my family to attend university, and I landed a high-paying job right after graduation. I own my own business, invest in property, and since I'm both single and childless, I can spend my income however I please. My ex ended up marrying my brother, and I'm somewhat cordial towards them, but I can't bring myself to fully forgive them for what they did. And although I know Lily is blameless, whenever I see her, I'm constantly reminded of how I was once overjoyed with holding her in the hospital thinking she was mine. so I can't bear to look at her for too long. I didn't visit her growing up, didn't take her on fun trips or give her lavish gifts like I did for the rest of my nieces and nephews. I wasn't mean or hateful to her, but I will admit I kept my distance. When my oldest nephew turned 18, I decided that I will pay for his college education since I could afford it while his parents couldn't. I even rented him one of my apartments for cheap so he wouldn't have to worry about money and could focus on getting his education. Since then, I did the same thing for 2 of my other nieces. Last week, Lily approached me during a family event and inquired if I could pay for her education. I told her no. She then called me a jerk and asked why I was so distant towards her and her parents, to the point where I couldn't even do her the same favor I did for the rest of her cousins. I told her that her parents have enough money to afford her education and asked her how she could possibly expect me to be okay with watching my ex and brother, who had an affair behind my back, play happy family in front of me. After that, Lily got quiet for the rest of the event and left early. I later got a call from my ex, yelling at me for ruining her family. Apparently, she and my brother didn't bother telling Lily about what they did to me all those years ago, and now that she knows, she's so angry at them, and she decided to go live with her boyfriend's family. I'm starting to feel guilty that I told her the truth since it affected her more than I thought it would, but at the same time, she has grown enough to know the truth, and I don't think I could have lied to her face even if I wanted to. Am I the jerk? Edit. For those asking why it was so hard for me to look at Lily all those years, here's a couple of reasons to sum it up. 1. My ex and I began dating when we were 13 and broke up when we were 24, so 11 years. She knew about my infertility issues and how much I wanted to be a dad and still led me on to believe the baby was mine. 2. I named Lily when she was born since I always liked the name and wanted to name my daughter that. My ex didn't change her name even after it was discovered she's not mine. 3. My brother and I look alike. Lily looks like my brother, and as a result, she also looks a lot like me. If my ex didn't tell me back then I wasn't her father, I wouldn't have suspected a thing. 4. Having to witness a kid that looks like me, has the name I chose, and was being raised by the woman I loved for so long, all the while being infertile, really made it impossible for me to be an active part of Lily's life like I was for her cousins. Not out of resentment for her, but for the sake of my mental health. I decided to listen to some of your advice and text Lily. I asked if she would like to meet up and have a conversation about all that went on, since like you said, she does deserve some answers. She hasn't replied yet. Not the jerk. As someone in a family who likes to keep secrets, thank you for telling her the truth. She deserved to know it, and she will appreciate it in the long run. It also gave her understanding on why her uncle treated her so differently, which clearly has plagued her. I'm sure her parents are upset to be caught in their lies for the second time in nearly 2 decades, but they are their lies. They are responsible for their lies and the consequences of them. They should have told their own daughter first. Someone was going to tell her eventually, inside or outside the family. Thing is, both parents are horrible people. They betrayed OP, repeatedly told lies to OP and everyone else to hide their relationship. They almost let OP believe he was the father. So the chances of them being honest, moral, good people and doing the right thing with their own daughter, like telling her the truth about how they got together, was always going to be unlikely. Liars gonna lie. Not the jerk. Your ex and brother should have talked to her. Sounds like maybe she's asked them why you were distant with them and never got a clear answer. But she did now. Did her parents know she was coming to you and asking you to pay for her education? If so, what did they expect? For you to jump and gladly do it? They are the jerks. What do you think? Was OP the jerk for telling his niece the truth or not? Please let us know.
No, but her parents are super jerks.
Am I the jerk for throwing them out of a house that we own? My wife and I bought a 4-bedroom house in Pennsylvania that my son lives in. Our son went to college in Pennsylvania and wanted to stay in the area, so we bought the house as a second home. We live in New Jersey and commute into Manhattan for work. We figured that he would have a place to live and we could visit every so often and spend some quality time together. We pay the taxes and services and maintenance on the house. Our son pays for his groceries and the house utilities. All was going well for a few years. Our son meets a girl and they get serious. We meet her and she seems nice enough. They announce their engagement and she moves into the house with our son. Now for the problem, the wedding. We hold a little get-to-know-you barbecue at the Pennsylvania house. My son and daughter are there, as are our son's fiancée and her parents and sisters. We all seem to be getting along well. My wife, daughter, and the fiancé go into the house, along with her mother and sisters and my son. A few minutes later, my wife and daughter come out and are really upset. They come over and tell me we are leaving and driving back to New Jersey. I try to figure out what happened. Once we get back to New Jersey and they calm down, they tell me that our son and his fiancée, along with her family, don't want us at the wedding. According to what I was told, we are not their kind of people. I was livid. I called my son and asked him what on earth this was about. He tells me that her family feel that we are not good enough and will embarrass them at a family wedding, and that we are all uninvited from the wedding. I let a week go by to calm myself down and drive back to the Pennsylvania house. The new future in-laws are in the house along with the fiancé. It appears that they all moved into the house. They ask me why I'm there. I tell them that since we aren't invited to the wedding, I was coming over to talk to my son. They tell me to leave their house. I lost it and told them that they had 30 days to get out. Tell my son I'm selling the house and he could find somewhere else to live with all of you. I go to a realtor in town and list the house for sale. They call my son at work and tell him what I said. Apparently, they thought that he owned the house. He calls me and asks why I'm selling his house. I tell him I paid for it along with the taxes on it and it's mine. He was living there rent-free, but since he doesn't want us in his new life, he has to get out. I tell him the same as I told his future in-laws. They have 30 days to get out, then I'll get a lawyer and get them evicted. Am I the jerk for taking a hard stance on this? He is my son, but the in-laws seem to take over and we no longer count. Not the jerk. You don't need a lawyer in 30 days. You need one now. I'm not familiar with Pennsylvania tenant laws, etc., but you need to follow everything by the book so they can't contest anything. I would also go back and videotape with timestamp the entire property inside and out so they can be held accountable for any damage done. Not the jerk. Rock on, man. He was wrong, and there's no amount of excuses or words to convince otherwise. It overall seems toxic, and there's no reason why he should allow anyone to exclude his family. I could understand if maybe you haven't been supportive or there were issues, but based on what I read, it baffles me why he would even do this. Don't let in. Keep going forward. If this is the life he wants, they can find another house together, not use you for an easy life. Always read the contract. I work on a military vehicle carrier. Ever seen those ships that look like giant floating shoeboxes? That's what I work on. They have a tiny living area, a tinier bridge, and a decent-sized engine room. In the industry, we call them row-rows, roll on, roll off, as they don't crane cargo on and off. They actually have a massive stern ramp to allow cargo to drive on and off itself. All of these flaws I mentioned were designed to give as much space to the massive cargo holds, and they are massive. We were in a shipyard in North Charleston, South Carolina for repairs a few years back. One of the many jobs we contracted to have done was the chipping and painting of the interior cargo holds. Now again, these cargo holds were massive. Imagine 2 football fields laid end to end with an overhead of 12 feet. Now imagine 5 decks, floors of that. The ship is big. To tie down all of the vehicle cargo, we have chain boxes throughout the holds, which are 4x4x3 aluminum boxes. These hold all of the ship's lashing gear and are strategically located all over the ship's cargo holds. Unfortunately for me, the shipyard workers decided these made great trash cans. There was always one within tossing distance, and best of all, it hid their garbage. Why toss it onto the deck when there was a chain box nearby? After 2 weeks of nagging the contractors to stop tossing their trash into the bins, I fumed to the captain next door. He suggested I read the contract we had with his painting company. I was not smart enough to see what he wanted me to do, so he dumbed it down for me. So-and-so coatings were there to provide me with transportation, just an electric golf cart, up and down all 6 decks to ensure the work is being done and levels of cleanliness are being maintained. I even had a driver, whom I will call Radar, like the dude from MASH, the TV show. I showed him the contract. All rubbish brought aboard by contractors was to be disposed of by them. They naively assumed this meant those garbage cans we ignore for the chain boxes. And so I did just that. I made Radar stop at every chain box and empty them out, and there were about 90 to 100 of them. The first 2 to 3 days, he tried to claim that the garbage, almost all Monster drinks, coffee cups, water bottles, and cigarette packs, was there already, but he cleaned them up as a token of goodwill. Naturally, they were full the next day as well, and the day after that, and the day after that. After about 10 days of this, Radar had enough. He tried to complain to his boss about the workers tossing their trash into the chain boxes, and the solution was to let the workers toss their crap in the chain boxes. We'll clean it up at the end. Come to the end of the job, and surprise, surprise, Radar tried to drive me right to the painting job, right past the garbage-strewn chain boxes. Imagine his surprise when he realized I had not forgotten about the rubbish. As a matter of fact, I told Radar I wanted to see the chain boxes before anything else. When I realized they were still full of rubbish, I told Radar, "Empty that crap, and don't call me until it's done." So-and-so coatings were not happy about this, and any question they asked about the quality of paintwork was shot down by me. As they wanted to get paid, the owner of the company joined Radar and one other guy, and they spent all afternoon emptying the rubbish from 100 chain boxes. I made it clear no painting approval would be considered until all rubbish was removed, period. So Radar and the big box spent a half day emptying the chain boxes of the trash his workers had filled. Why Big Boss? Apparently, all of his workers had some big money, US Navy rush job to attend to, and he wasn't getting paid until I was happy. And I was not happy. At least not until Big Boss was very unhappy. I got my good paint job and my clean chain boxes. Am I the jerk for preventing my daughter from getting a new phone? Forgive me if I'm heated in this post, but this situation makes me extremely angry. A few months ago, my daughter smashed her iPhone for a social media post. In the post, she said, "It's okay, my parents will buy me a new one." The thing is, I definitely would have bought her a new one that same day and would have never known if it wasn't for the fact that her brother tipped me off and showed me the post. Her father and I were obviously extremely angry. We both came from rough childhoods and worked hard to build a good life for our kids. So to see her take advantage of that was extremely upsetting in a way I can't even describe. Her father and I are divorced, but we sat down and agreed that 1. We are cutting off her allowance, and her purchases now have to come through us. 2. We will never buy her a new phone, but we might consider a flip phone when she goes to college. 3. We will monitor her social media to make sure she's not participating in damaging content. 4. If she gets a job and wants a new phone, she first has to pay us back for the phone she destroyed. 5. We won't buy her a car when she turns 16. As I said, a few months have passed and I still feel the same way, but her dad has softened and he thinks her attitude has changed. He says that we might be too harsh over a teenager's mistake and we should at least give her an allowance for chores and change "we're never buying you a phone ever" to "going a year without a phone." Personally, I don't care if all kids have one. She has an iPad with social media and a MacBook. She can still message her friends, but I refuse to get her another phone. If she wants one, she can get a part-time job and work for it so she can see how much work goes into getting a phone. But I don't see value in giving more money to a kid who doesn't know the value of money. I'd rather my daughter be unhappy for a few years over a phone than raise another spoiled and out-of-touch jerk for the world. Her dad respects my opinion and agreed he won't give her a phone or allowance. But now my daughter is angry at me and calling me a narcissist and controlling. However, my actions are a direct result of her misbehavior and I'm not preventing her from getting a phone. She is free to work and buy one at any point. However, I think I might be the jerk because my daughter will be punished for years over one mistake. Am I the jerk here? Fiancée left me due to my health condition. I left her destitute. We dated for 4 years and had what I thought was a great relationship. We were both well-established professionals who both owned homes in the same neighborhood and both with daughters in the home. Her daughter was 11 and mine was 16 when we met. We had actually planned to get married, build a house, and raise the two together. We planned the house build because she had recently been diagnosed with a neurological disease that would eventually put her in a wheelchair and need something ADA friendly. During the planning stages, I began doing landscape and construction projects on her home to increase the resale value. All in, I invested roughly $30,000 into the home, running everything through my side construction business for tax, permitting, and resale purposes. We had a contract that payment would be made upon the sale of the home. I produced invoices for each and every project, but never pushed for payment because of the prior agreement. Fast forward 6 months, we're looking at property to develop and finalizing drawings on the home when I began feeling ill. I couldn't eat, constantly vomiting and passing blood. I began noticing that my abdomen looked swollen, which was odd because we were both very clean eaters and were in the gym every day. So I went to the doctor and began having tests done. During this time, she began having small cognitive issues, and the stress of her current position was exacerbating her condition. So she took a $20,000 per annum cut in pay along with a lesser position inside the company. After a month or so of different tests and a biopsy, it came back that I had a golf ball-sized tumor in my stomach and would need to begin chemotherapy. So I began chemo and radiation treatments, which made me, expectedly so, extremely ill. She was spending time helping around my place on the weekends and staying over more, to the point that they were both at my home more than theirs. At this point, I suggested that we go ahead and put one of our houses on the market and move in together until the new house was built. I have great supplemental insurance as well as a long-term illness plan, so using that coupled with the sale of one of our houses would push us through comfortably and help ease the financial stress on her. Shortly after this discussion, she became extremely distant. Her daughter wasn't coming down and hanging out with mine anymore. She had excuses for not getting together. She quit driving me to treatments and stopped staying over. She then dropped a bomb, a sentence that will forever be burned into my psyche. I love you, but I can't see myself taking care of someone this sick in the long term, and I don't think we should see each other any longer. In a text. It broke me, I won't lie. This was the first woman I had ever opened up to and planned a life with since my wife died when my kids were 1 and 3. However, I tried to be mature about it. I forced myself to understand her position and to accept what I could not change. I calmly, the next day, gathered all of her things, packed them neatly, loaded them into my truck, and took them to her house to leave on the back porch while she was at work, in order to avoid any awkward exchanges. Walking around the back and under the porch cover, I sat down in a box and saw her in the back living room, on the couch, hooking up with a guy that she had introduced me to as a lifelong friend. I had dinner and drinks with this man and his girlfriend. We had gone on vacation with them as well. I never spoke on the incident with her and simply sent her a text later explaining that I would leave her things on my side porch to pick up at her convenience. I discovered 8 or 9 months later from his now ex-girlfriend that they had broken up due to him confessing that he had been hooking up with my significant other dating back to about the time we were finishing drawings on the new home. Now I'm mad. Revenge time. At this point, I had finished chemo and radiation for the time being and was feeling healthier. I was going through some much neglected paperwork when I ran across the file that contained $32,000 in unpaid, long overdue invoices, which were promptly sent to my attorney to begin lien proceedings on the home. It turns out that I couldn't have done this a moment too soon because she was set to put her house on the market. Coupled with interest over the course of what was then 19 months overdue, the invoices were hefty. That, along with the agreement of settling them when the house was sold and attorney fees, left her with roughly $10,000 after the sale of the home and selling her current mortgage. She promptly had to back out of the purchase of another home and moved in with her oldest daughter, sister-in-law, and 2 grandkids. She also had to leave her home and begin receiving disability. I ran into her a little over a year ago, and she looked as if she had aged 20 years and was in the wheelchair we had talked about. We chatted cordially, but briefly, and I excused myself and went on with my day. A few days later, her younger daughter called me and spoke of my running into her mom and could we hang out sometime. I gave her a vague answer, thanked her for calling, and again went on with my day. The ex then called me a week or so later and began apologizing for leaving me as she did. Again, cordial but short. I thanked her for calling and hung up. She began texting, and this went on for several weeks until she asked if I could ever see us rekindling what we had, to which I replied, I can't see myself taking care of someone so sick in the long term. Remember the box on your back porch? Did you think that lifelong friend brought that over to you from my house? Good luck to you. Goodbye. I sometimes feel guilt over this, but not much and not often. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend to get a job or get out? I, 27, have been with my boyfriend, who's also 27, for 8 years, and we've been living together for 6. For college graduation, my dad gifted me a house, paid off as he is very well off. Since graduation, I've started my career and have become very successful and enjoy my work. My boyfriend has not. He did not complete college and has jumped between low-paying jobs for the last 6 to 7 years. This never bothered me. I make enough money to support us both. I pay our utilities and other fees with some help from him. Late last year, my boyfriend lost his job and was still looking for a new one when the lockdown hit. He now claims it is nearly impossible to get a job, which I understand. but have also had other friends in the same town manage to get jobs since the lockdown. All of this would be okay, except my dad lives in a city nearby and will often stop by, with warning. When he does, I do not mind him eating anything he wants out of the refrigerator or using my appliances. I figured he gave me a place to live payment-free, so it's only fair. I also do not care if my boyfriend eats whatever he wants either. Last week, my dad ate food that my boyfriend had purchased. This has happened in the past, but from my perspective, we live rent-free, so it shouldn't be a big deal. It is never special food, normally like regular chicken or something you can get at the market. My boyfriend is normally annoyed, but this time he went ballistic and took my dad's laptop charger out of his bag to get even. By the time my dad figured out his charger was missing, his computer was almost dead and he had an important virtual meeting. Thankfully, he had a spare, but I was livid. I told my boyfriend that he lives rent-free and that if he was going to act that insane about some food when he regularly eats what I buy and turn into a child, then I expected him to get a job and pay rent or else get out. He chose to get out, but accused me of being a jerk and throwing him out on the street. However, he has a brother and a sister that live nearby, as well as his mother who regularly asks him to come stay with her, which he normally doesn't. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Karen demands I just do my job, ends up getting arrested. So I used to work as a cashier in a supermarket. This story took place on my 4th day of work there and my 2nd day working at a cash on my own without a supervisor sitting next to me, teaching me the ropes. Yes, I only had 2 days of training. I'm sure most of you will figure out which country I live in from the following explanation. It will become relevant later. Supermarkets in my country are a zoo on a regular day. However, Thursdays and Fridays are absolute mayhem at the store and are a special kind of horrible. Fridays, the store closes 2 hours before sundown, as do most stores in this country. People go crazy on Fridays trying to get all their shopping done and get home in time to cook dinner. If you can avoid coming to the store on Friday, please do so at all costs. I always told people after this day. The reason Thursdays are horrible is because we get all the customers who don't want to come on Friday. Now this was early evening on a Thursday at a time when the store is absolutely jam-packed. We had 10 checkout lines open and everyone had at least 6 to 7 people in line. Basically, if you're stuck with a slow cashier, there's nowhere else to go unless you have 10 items or less. Everything is going well until I get a customer with 2 shopping carts full of items, mostly non-perishable items. And these are the large carts you will find around big stores in the US like Walmart. I found out later he buys this for a community center in his neighborhood and he fills up their pantry twice a year. Nice guy. He greeted me very politely and then said the most dreaded words I could have heard that night. "This will be a delivery." Just a quick break from the story to explain why this was so dreaded, especially on a day like today. When we get a delivery, the cashier would call a helper from the store to help bag the groceries. Usually people do their own bagging. The bags would then be placed in plastic containers, and containers would then be placed on top of each other and taken to the back fridge until delivery. A regular delivery is usually between 3 to 5 crates. Each crate has a number, which then I have to input all of them into the computer, along with correct delivery address and phone number, and print out with the receipt and place copies in the crates. Even for a small delivery, this always takes extra time. Back to the story. This guy has 2 full carts and wants a delivery. I say, sure, no problem. Then I turn to everyone else in line and let them know that this is a delivery and it will take just a bit longer than usual, and I apologize for any delay this may cause. We always do this so customers will be aware of the delay and can move to another cash if they're in a hurry. This is when the whole line groans simultaneously. I don't blame them. There was nowhere else to go. I could see every one of them craning their necks to check out other lines, and they all decided to stay. So I started scanning as fast as I could. I'm pretty good with numbers, so even though it's my 4th day, I remember many of the codes and things are moving rather quickly. I get to a point where the bagger can't keep up with all the items, and the area to the left of me, where I place all the scanned items, is just a mountain of cans and bags of chips and whatnot. I can't even scan another item because they're all falling back onto my scale. At this point, I stop and ask if he wants help bagging. The customer and the bagger are both appreciative, and I help bag groceries for a few minutes, just enough to clear some space so I can continue scanning items. This happens every few minutes. It gets full, I stop to help, clear some space, and keep going. This is where the Karen comes into play. She's maybe early 40s, long brown hair, and looks nothing like a Karen, except for the way she was standing, with one hand on a hip that extended so far to the side, I wasn't sure how she's still standing. She's in my line, about 5 to 6 people in front of her still. This is the conversation that follows. Karen.
Hello? What are you doing?
Me. Not answering, because I didn't think she was talking to me. I keep scanning. Karen.
Excuse me? What kind of a cashier are you? Why aren't you doing your job? Stop being lazy and do your job.
She screams at the top of her lungs. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just trying to… Karen.
That's not your job. You are a cashier. Do your job. Do your job.
I realize now, after reading so many Reddit stories, that this would have been a perfect chance for some malicious compliance. I'm sure some of you hope that I did just what Karen wanted. Too bad I didn't know about it then, or that it was only my 4th day on the job. That's not what happened, although I dream sometimes that I did just that. Sit back and sip my coffee until some space cleared for more scanned items. You know, be a cashier. Next time. Me. I'm just helping to move things along faster. If this is a problem, or you're in a hurry, feel free to move to another line. I'm sure another cashier will be more than happy to serve you. I may sound like I'm the jerk with this line, but I said it really nicely, not sarcastic at all. Obviously, that didn't help. Karen, not listening anyway and having none of it.
Just do your job. You are a cashier. What is wrong with you? Are you stupid? You should be fired.
I stop listening at this point and don't answer, as I'm still helping to bag and scan as fast as possible, knowing it's not going to help anyway. However, I see one of my managers, let's call him Joe, walk up to Karen. Joe is great, by the way, always helping the workers. Joe.
What seems to be the problem?
Karen, still yelling.
Your cashier is awful. She is lazy and she's not doing her job. You should fire her. Tell her to do her job. She's not doing her job.
She repeated that a few times like a broken record. Joe looks over at me for a second, understands exactly what is happening, turns to Karen and says, "Can't you see she's trying to help? She's trying to make things go much faster." Now Karen starts screaming words. I'm assuming because I couldn't really make them out. She was practically foaming at the mouth. Joe tries to calm her down by explaining, or trying to, how me bagging items is actually helping, and this makes Karen even more irate, if you can believe it. Spit flying from her mouth, arms flailing, screaming like a banshee. Suddenly, I notice an older woman, nice old lady. She must have been around 80 years old, trying to get Karen's attention by tapping her on the shoulder. It takes a few tries, but she finally gets her attention and spins her around by her shoulder. Nice old lady.
Hey, Karen. Karen, excuse me. Karen.
Karen.
What?
Nice old lady.
Your daughter is crying.
This is when the entire store seemed to have stopped talking all at once, like someone pressed mute and turned off the volume. The sea of people in front of me parts a bit, and we all look down and see this girl, who couldn't have been older than 4, clutching her mom, bawling her eyes out, snot going out everywhere, hyperventilating. She was terrified, and I can't blame her. Seeing her mother going off like that must have been terrifying, and she has no idea what's happening. She's in a huge store where she knows no one, and she's practically invisible. The silence lasted an entire 2 seconds, because that's when Karen started yelling at Joe.
Look what you did. You and your stupid, lazy cashier made my daughter cry.
And a bunch of other crazy sounds that were perhaps supposed to be words. Things happen in slow motion for the next few seconds. She starts to swing towards Joe. Joe's not a big guy, but he's bigger than Karen, that's for sure. And he's not easily intimidated. Not his first Karen. She would have decked him right in the face if the nice old lady hadn't grabbed her in a bear hug to stop her. Yes, she did. I had to pick up my jaw off the floor. At that point, other customers get involved trying to peel off the nice old lady from Karen and stop Karen from trying to hurt Joe. And from Joe trying to hurt Karen, because he was fuming by then. At this point, I saw mall security storm the castle. Our store was inside a mall. And the sea of people just surrounded Karen, and I couldn't really see much of anything anymore. Kind of like football players when there's a fumble and they all jump on the ball. By the sound of yelling getting further and further away, I figured Karen was being led either to the back office or to the mall security office, mall jail. This entire time this is happening, I'm still bagging and scanning items, and I'm about halfway through this customer's purchase. I finish up with him with no more problems. He was very nice and thanked me profusely for helping with the bags, even though technically it wasn't part of my job. He said I was the fastest and nicest cashier he had ever had the pleasure of meeting. I was just happy to help. No one else in my line complained. I actually got compliments from people about keeping my composure. Apparently, many cashiers in my country think it's okay to yell at customers and just be plain nasty. I worked in customer service for many years prior, and I've never yelled at a customer, even if they deserved it. Once the rush died down a bit, I went for a break. I met another employee in the back room, and I started to tell him of what just happened when he cut me off. "She was yelling at you?" I heard that. Well, everyone heard that, but I had no idea what was happening. He told me that police were called, and Karen was escorted out of the store and the mall in handcuffs. I filled him in on everything, and we spent the next 30 minutes joking. I don't know what happened with the kid. I'm assuming they called another family member to pick her up. I also don't know what happened with Karen after that, since I ended up working there for another year and I never saw her again. Hopefully, she learned to do her grocery shopping on Tuesday or Wednesday, or was possibly in prison or house arrest. This was the first Karen I had the displeasure of meeting while working at that store, but definitely not the last. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that being a stay-at-home mom is not hard? My wife's making a bigger deal of this than it needs to be. Me, 48, and my wife, 48, married when we were 22, and we have 5 kids now, who are 25, 22, 19, and 3. The 3-year-old was a surprise. Our other kids are adults. For the majority of their lives, I was the stay-at-home parent. I cooked, cleaned, attended games, etc. From the moment they came home from the hospital, all up until their mid-teens when I deemed them old enough to stay home by themselves. Like usual, I quit my job and had been watching her at home, but 8 months ago, my wife comes to me and says she'd like to quit her job and watch our daughter. I was skeptical because she had never done it before, but she's her mother and assumed she can handle it like I did. Well, she hasn't been handling it well at all. Whenever I come home from work, the bathroom is a mess. There's no dinner cooked, our daughter is a mess, and my wife is just watching TV. After I tidy up the house, cook dinner, which I don't mind, I've been doing it for over 25 years, and get ready for bed, she complains about how being a stay-at-home mom is hard. Personally, I think she's lazy, and I voiced my thoughts. She tried to tell me it's different, but I told her it's not. I was able to watch the twins with little to no difficulty, all the way up until they were 14. I watched our 3rd and 4th kid with no hassle either. I had the house cleaned, the food ready, the kids clean, homework done, went to their games, school meetings, etc. I never asked for help and sucked it up because I was a dad. For her to have so much trouble watching a 3-year-old is ridiculous. She's been silent with me since that conversation, but when I came home from work, the house was actually clean, food was cooked, and our daughter was clean as well. I'm starting to feel like the jerk because maybe it's different for her, but how can raising kids be so difficult and different for us? Note, each time after giving birth, she did not immediately return to work. She did stay at home for about 1 year so she could recuperate. I, along with hired help, watched the kids and took care of the house. We come from a very wealthy family, so returning to work has never been troublesome for me. Edit. I want everyone to understand that I do love my wife, but she has not been able to take care of the house or our daughter. Being a stay-at-home parent means taking care of the house and the kids, and she does neither. My wife claims she's not depressed, but I can't allow for this to continue. I'll have to discuss with her if she would like to return to work or if she wants for both of us to be stay-at-home parents. We have the funds to retire early. I feel as if she may reject this, and if she does, I will put my foot down and hire help for her. She needs it more than she is willing to admit. Calling her out the way I did may have been harsh, and I will apologize for that, but it did seem to have an effect since she did take care of the house and our daughter. Update. Just got done discussing with my wife on why she hasn't been doing her part as a stay-at-home mom. We argued back and forth for a while, her saying that she still needs time to adjust. I'm shaming her, it's different from others. I brought up hiring help, and she quickly shot this down, becoming irritated that I suggested she needed help taking care of our home and our kid. It felt like we were going in circles. I eventually cut her off and began listing all the danger she's been putting our daughter in since becoming a stay-at-home mom, explaining how even though I went back to work, that I come back and have to clean up after her because she hasn't done her part, and told her I was sick of this. I apologized for calling her lazy, but she then broke down crying. My wife admits that being a stay-at-home mom was something she didn't think she'd be good at, but she desperately wanted to be here to raise our daughter because she wasn't there for our other kids. She said that when I was raising the kids, I made it seem so easy because everything was neat and the kids were happy and orderly. I told my wife that that's not true. You were always with us. We got out some picture books and I pointed out all the time she was with us, every trip we took, the games she tried her hardest to attend, taking time off work for holidays, bedtime stories, etc. She may not have been there for everything like I was, but me and the kids always saw her efforts. She even thought our kids held resentment towards her, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I asked her if she was possibly going through depression, but she assures me she's not. But we decided we should attend couples therapy along with some individual therapy for her. I asked if she enjoyed being with our daughter at home, and she admits that being able to spend all this time with her was refreshing and possibly the happiest she's ever been. She promised that she'll do her part and keep the house tidy to the best of her ability and will be more careful so that she doesn't put her in danger anymore. We sat down for a while and I gave my wife some ideas she and our daughter can do together while I'm at work. Go to the museum, aquarium, a picnic, etc. These were things I did with our kids, but I did tell her I was still going to hire someone to help her. She attempted to say no, but I shot her down. Being a stay-at-home mom is a lot harder for her than she realizes. I gave her all the pros that having a helper can give her. After a bit, my wife was more open to the idea. I'm glad we were able to get this out in the open. I'm still wondering if I should take some time off work before I hire someone to help my wife. That may possibly be more comfortable for her. I'll bring this up tomorrow. I'm going to plan something with our kids this weekend, possibly a barbecue. I want to tell the kids how my wife has been feeling. I know for a fact they love her, but I bet my wife would feel a lot better to see it come from them. I'm only going not the jerk here because unlike most posts I see like this, you've actually been a stay-at-home parent, so you know what it entails and have been able to do it. It sounds to me like you made it look easy, so she thought she wouldn't have to do much work at all. OP, you are absolutely not the jerk. Solutions have been offered and she's refusing them. That does not make you the jerk here. You are speaking from experience when you say it's not difficult because to you it wasn't. You did this until 8 months ago, so people saying, you did this 20 years ago, are 1, wrong, and 2, not even reading the whole thread before casting their judgment. Note to self, never post anything having to do with moms on this sub. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk here or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for walking out in the middle of my husband's birthday dinner? My husband, 30, male, and I, 27, female, have been together for 3 years and married for 5 months. Our relationship has been without any problems until the week before our wedding. My husband was very close friends with a woman, let's call her Ava, that he has known since they were sophomores in high school. I never had a problem with Ava, and I thought it was very obvious that she and my husband were just friends. I mean, she had a long-term boyfriend and all, so I felt no jealousy or anything. I actually got along with Ava pretty well. We all hung out together regularly. But then my husband dropped a bombshell on me the week before we got married. I remember he set me down and told me that Ava revealed to him that she had feelings for him and tried to convince him to not get married to me. She even broke up with her boyfriend of 6 years to prove that she was serious about my husband. My husband and I both agreed to cut her off. We uninvited her to our wedding and neither one of us have been in contact with her since. It was my husband's 30th birthday yesterday. He just wanted to have dinner with family and friends, so that's what we did. So we're all in a restaurant eating when all of a sudden Ava walks in. She walks to our table and says she didn't mean to intrude, that she was just getting dinner by herself and then saw us. She then wishes my husband a happy birthday. I expect her to leave, but then my husband asks if she wants to join us. I look at my husband like, what are you doing? I'm visibly uncomfortable and irritated. I stand up and tell Ava that she can have my seat, and then I walk out and get an Uber home because I want absolutely nothing to do with her. When my husband comes home almost 2 hours later, he immediately starts an argument with me. He tells me I overreacted and acted immaturely. I ask him why did he ask Ava to eat with us, because I thought we were on the same page. He replies that was just being nice, and he didn't think it would be a big deal because it's been a long time since he has seen her, so she probably doesn't have feelings for him anymore. And then he tells me that I ruined his birthday. I'm still upset about it all. I don't think I'm the one in the wrong. I mean, This woman literally tried to steal my partner. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's been 5 months, not 5 years. Your husband is delusional if he thinks she's genuinely gotten over him and his behavior was appropriate. Am I the jerk for trying to use my wealth to win my daughter's love? When I, female 28, was 18, I had to give birth to my daughter, Farah. No choice for me. I wanted to give her up for adoption, but Dave, her dad, was able to take her. In exchange for giving him full custody, we settled on me not paying any child support. I did not give up my parental rights. I thought I did what was best for me at the time. It let me focus on getting my degree, have fun, and start my own business, which has become wildly successful. When not studying or working or clubbing, however, I was very depressed and wound up torpedoing every relationship I was in, and it's all because I regretted my decision. Last year, my dad passed, and I inherited almost everything. This has pushed my personal wealth into 8 figures when you add up property and stuff. It just made me more depressed because I never got to fix things with my dad, and it's like I have all of this, but for what? So I finally decided to be brave and reach out to Dave, because maybe if I could have Farah in my life, I could be happy. Dave set up a meeting last year, and as soon as Farah saw me, she rushed at me and hugged me and called me mommy. It was amazing, and I honestly started crying. It has been so great since then getting to know her, picking her up from school, hearing about her day, helping with homework, getting to hug and kiss her. Even getting yelled at by her when she's upset is something I wouldn't give up. And I hate that I wasn't part of this before. It's like I have a real purpose, and all this money finally means something. I don't try and flex my wealth on Dave or his wife, Lydia, but they've made remarks about how cool Farah thinks my car is, or how I have a cleaning lady. But I never bought anything for her without clearing with them first. In exchange for visitation, I have paid back child support, and am paying it now to have her in my life. We currently have a meeting to restructure the custody agreement so I can get her on weekends. Yesterday was Farah's birthday, and the party is on Saturday, but as a surprise, I got her one of those toy Jeeps that kids ride around the block in, and a full street hockey setup, and those are the first gifts I didn't clear. She loved those so much, but Dave and Lydia got upset, but I was like, if we're restructuring the custody, I shouldn't need approval to buy things anymore. Lydia pointed out how expensive it all was and called me a jerk for using my money to win Farah's love instead of putting in hard work like she has. What she said has been troubling me, and maybe I have been like that. So I'm here to get an anonymous judgment. I'm not sure how to judge this one, but OP, I'm gonna give you some advice. Tread very carefully. My father was MIA from 2 to 11, so he came back about the same time you did for your daughter. The moment he walked back in, he immediately thought he was a parent and that he had a right to discipline me, make decisions for me, set rules for me, etc. Even though my mom had full custody and he never paid child support. Sound familiar? His parenting style was the complete opposite of my mom's, and there was never an attempt to co-parent, and the way he went about things was horrible. Additionally, he held things above my head using monetary value, such as gifts I really wanted. He thought if he gave me whatever, he could buy my love, but there was always a stipulation. And if I didn't meet his standards, no matter the reason, he would just say it's an excuse and then rip things away from me. He knew what he was doing. I haven't talked to him in 2 years. My bottom line is, don't walk in and suddenly think you're a parent. Kindly, you're not. Use this as an opportunity to get to know your daughter, have fun with her, etc. Talk to her parents about how to proceed with the big stuff, and stop making decisions without consulting. You have one chance to do this right, OP. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.